Hello and welcome to episode 160 of The Imperial Truth. I'm Greg. Joining me, as always, is Mr. Howard. Hello, Howard.
Hello, Greg. How are you doing?
Fan-dabby-dozy. How are you?
Fan-dabby-dozy. That's an excellent choice of salutation. I'm doing very well, thank you. I'm doing very well.
We've gone for... No other podcast is going to have the quote, Fan-dabby-dozy is an excellent salutation. I think if you've never listened to The Imperial Truth before, that probably sums us up.
Thank you, and good evening. That was episode 160 of the...
Yeah, indeed. Yes. Before we go any further, Element Games. I can't even remember what's coming out next. Frankly, more Heresy things. We'll have Land Raiders soon.
Oh yes, so excited for the Land Raider.
You name it. If GW have made enough of them, they're in stock there, and you can buy them.
Yes.
Bless GW. Yes. Still trying to keep up with demand. Everything you want plus.
Everything you want and quickly as well, which is kind of the thing. I really want to get it quickly and put it under my desk and not build it. Yes, which is oh dear, so true, so very true.
Now and save it for 4 years' time.
It's upsetting. It's really upsetting how that is the case, but it's not going to change.
I mean, the good thing is, Howard, you know that if you lost your job tomorrow, it wouldn't matter because for hobby, you're set.
Yeah, I agree. We'll touch on that on another show because that's a whole world of things.
The question is,
as I get older, have I got enough? Are there enough years left to actually build this at the rate at which I'm building them?
Has that been a thought process for you? How many
genuinely?
More years of
it's genuinely. Admittedly, it was after a few whiskies. It was late of an evening with a good friend, my good friend Stu.
I think mine sometimes has been around hospital trips. And
yeah.
I know. Luckily, I know some people in the Age of Sigmar community, Warhammer / Age of Sigmar community. They call themselves the Tree Lord Ancients because they are older chaps, and they tend to play dwarfs. But these ones have moved on to Silverdeath and things. But they give me hope that there's more years than I kind of think there will be.
There's a pact going on. There's a group of friends of mine that we're just going to all be at a similar retirement home and just turn it into a hobby retirement home.
That's it. That's the way forward.
I could see that being a thing.
Anyway, Element Games. Provide all these toys for you to paint or not paint as you wish, and the paints to do so, and the airbrushes to push the paint through, and a million other things. They're all going on. So, go check them out. Use the link in the show notes if you want to support the podcast. Wonderful stuff. Howard, have you been heresying?
A bit. I've actually built all the individual pieces of a Contemptor Dreadnought because that's a great kit, although I had seen people starting to talk about how it's quite a lot of pieces because you've got to make up the pieces that made the resin one. It's a great kit, and I'm really going to enjoy it, but that was a thing. It did take a bit longer to put together, but I'm all for it because plastic, and plastic's the best. It just is. I am in the process. I might actually be playing a Heresy game on Sunday, which I'm very excited to do. But I know, which considering I don't have access to I do have access to some models, but certainly not a cohesive force. I'm going to be borrowing a friend's army and joining them and either watching or into participating. But I'm looking at doing some 3D printing, some bits and pieces as well. I'm missing my 3D printer because it's in packed away while we have housework done. So I'm looking at doing bits for Recon Marines. I'm looking at doing some bits and pieces for Contemptor Dreadnoughts.
Which bits?
Basically to convert the bolters into Nemesis bolters, and I might do some bits and pieces to just sort of make them look like they've been out in the field a bit longer.
What have you found the files?
I have.
Okay, cool. I'm intrigued because I need to do the same. Not necessarily maybe for recons, maybe for scouts, maybe for vets, maybe for seekers.
Yes, seekers.
They can all do the
cheaper
same,
option,
can't they?
If you will. Yes. But that's because I'm looking at the Alpha Legion I've got over here and the colour tests I've done of them. So it's just logical. I'd quite like to do some Mark 6 headhunters as well. So they'll be similar. And maybe do some shoulder pads and things like that. Something just to... I don't want to go too far with them.
we've got a guy at the club who's decent sculpting, and he's a Space Wolves fan, and he's done lots of his own Space Wolf stuff for 40k. And I'm like, well, what we might have to do here is get him to do some cloaks and some wolfy bits for some proper like Space Wolf Scout vibes.
Nice.
Yeah, and then I need to print off some Nemesis bolters and some other bits as well. I think the other thing I need is Thunderhammers, Terminator Thunderhammers. But we'll see, because I have a horrible idea of a list that I want to build, which is ridiculous. But
I've seen a sneak preview of that, and it feels diabolical, even though you're doing your best to justify it.
I don't think it is diabolical. I think it's mad, and it would cost a decent amount of money. But
well, there is that. Are they even in stock?
Surprisingly, not as much, I suppose. Now those Terminators come in boxes of 10s for decent prices.
If they're still available, which I don't think they are.
No,
they've sold out. They'll come back, of course.
Yeah, exactly. They'll be. I think I saw someone was like, these kits aren't being sold anymore by GW. It's like, no, they've been back in stock twice and sold out twice.
But they go within about 24 hours. So yeah, there is some Heresy hobbying. It's been with holidays and bits and pieces. It's been diminished. Holidays, you think, there'll be time for hobby there. Nope, zero. Basically, just put everything down for 10 days. I'm not even going to be anywhere near this, which is a shame.
So demoralising. But yeah, no, it's cool. That's cool.
What about yourself?
I built my Leviathan. My Leviathan was pretty much built before they announced it, but I didn't quite get enough time to put any paint on it to have it shown off on the release date. So I've got plus I do need a second Leviathan, because I need a storm cannon on both arms for one of my Leviathans, because that's fun. I haven't done a lot, to be honest. I bought a load of tell you what I bought. I bought the remains of a Prospero box, because I'd already had the talons out of it. I bought a Betrayal at Cowth box.
Hello.
And an Age of Darkness box off a friend and there's some other little bits and pieces with that as well, off a guy who's like, I want to do 30k, and then got out of it. So he offered me a good deal on it. Quite nice. A lot of the stuff is built. So I've sold some of the bits I don't need. Like, I don't need another 10 cataphracti. In fact, there's 20 cataphracti in those 3 boxes total. Don't need them. Do need the Dreadnought and the Spartan. Do want some more Mark IV and Mark III, because I've got some heavy weapons kits, bits and pieces somewhere, I think.
Is this all going into the Space Wolves, or are you going somewhere else with this?
This is a bit stockpiley. I will probably sell some of the Mark VI and some of the Mark IV as well. Okay. Maybe I'd sell bits off just to recoup some of that money, because once I do that and then take off the value of the Spartan, the Dreadnought, the bits I do want, and the Tartarus, because I want the Tartarus definitely. I think I might even be I think by the time I've sold that stuff, I won't have paid much for the bits I have left. There's the odd thing like a Zephon in there, which I can move on, and some slightly converted Thousand Suns dudes with Grey Knight chest pieces.
Okay.
With a little collar bit at the back, stuff like that. So I'm going to move them on, put them on eBay or whatever. So there was a bit of purchasing there, and I've got a few little bits. I've been trying to find time to sit down and actually build something, but we spent most of last Saturday putting flooring down in the garage, rubber tiles, cutting them up and doing that.
Tell you, speaking of thinking, because you're creating the perfect hobby zone. Now, what you did do, of course,
it's not wide enough for the perfect hobby zone, but yeah.
What you did do was you picked up a little Zone Mortalis board, if I remember correctly.
I did,
There's a story here, everyone. There's a story here. I've just got to go.
There was a guy in Kent who put a Zone Mortalis board up for sale, 6x4, a while ago, actually,
Absolutely beautiful.
Sometime.
Yeah,
really well done. Last year sometime. I looked at it and I was like, that's a bit expensive. I mean, it would have sold
It was excellent value.
likely.
It was excellent value, but it's still a chunk of change.
If you're going to buy
by
a full
any
size.
measure, it's a chunk of change.
Yeah, indeed. And then he put it up again for slightly less money, although still a chunk of cash.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh, that's interesting. It's all painted, all looks good, and I don't have to add to it. That will do. We'll have the room ready soon to put it in. I thought, no, better not. And then I saw a few friends commenting on actually, and someone did mention your name. And then
But
I saw,
actually, I mentioned
oh, that's
a
right, you
mutual
mentioned your
friend's
friend.
name. I
Yes,
said,
indeed, yeah.
it's me, myself, and my friend Ant, who has just moved into his new house. I said, Ant, there's an opportunity here. This could be pretty good. Before he'd had a chance to respond,
There was
out
someone
of the
else. There was someone
darkness.
else as well. There was another friend who mentioned it as well, and I was like, you know what? Stuff it. Let's take it. And yeah, jumped in. Snooze you loose. Like you gotta be
Wow,
saying.
it's
I was
cold.
like, yeah, that's
It's cold.
fine.
It's cold, and I
Don't
like it.
care.
I like the cut of your jib. I like that.
Absolutely no guilt here. Trust me. And thinking as well because there's 3 or 4 people who are interested in this, and if I don't want it, I can sell it on
Well, this is
and
true.
not lose any money. So yeah, I have that, and I have I was going to get IKEA Kallax units, and lay a 3x4 on its sides with 3 high. And the missus was like, "It's be too tall," and I'm like, "No, trust me." The blessed relief of having a 4-foot high
Oh my god,
gaming table
it's
will be
so good.
beautiful.
High-level gaming tables are the future.
Yeah, so the garage cost was going up, and then luckily Homebase did had a sale on the wooden version of their Kallax. That was like £32 for a 3x4 or 3x3 section. It's slightly smaller. £32. Bought 2 of them and then 2 ends that are the same height than 2x3s. So it can have a little, almost look like a Games Workshop. And then the tiles fit in Kallax units. So hopefully the tiles will store in them. And then I'll have to rearrange what I'm doing with the storage because it's really tight. It's like a garage, and then we've had to batten and then board. So you've lost a bit of the width because of that. So like getting a 4-foot table in and standing 2 people either side of it, it's doable. But that's a 6-foot area of then the floor where you can't have anything else. So at least we can have some storage under the table. Yeah, so we're getting there. We did it. We were like, we got 5 more mats to do. We've got to cut them all up with a knife. It's a bit of a pain. And then realised we bought a garage set, and it was like, I think that works. 13.5 square meters, and we've got 12 square meters roughly of garage. It should work, and we're 1 tile short. So I've ordered them. So hopefully we're going to get. Well, that's my bank holiday Monday job. One of them is hopefully to finish that off and start moving stuff out of this room into that room. So that's been taking up a bit of time.
It counts. It's hobby. That's hobby fun.
I've got to eBay loads of stuff as well. Like so much stuff in here that I still need to move around. I've got to eBay.
Yeah. Well, when we get back in the house, so we'll be doing some pretty aggressive sorting out, I think. But that's a big if right now.
Yeah. eBay have got, you can have 70% off sales fees again this weekend. And I'm like, thank you, brilliant. I don't know if I've got any time to sit and organise any sales, but I will do it anyway. And hopefully I will find the odd minute here and there. But yeah, so yeah, just trying to organise. I actually bought an airbrush exhaust box thing.
Yeah.
One of them.
I've got one of those and never used it.
No, because my wife's going to be moving into the same room where I hobby.
Sensible.
Probably, and there's a window right next door, to where I paint. So need to do that. Like lots of little bits and pieces, but no, nothing to really show for it, which is a bit of a shame.
Do you play any games?
I did. So we got a few people at the club playing. We got a guy who's getting into 30k, and he's played some big games. And we were like, yeah, let's play 3,000 points. I was like, okay, cool. I'll take some Space Wolves and I'll try the Pale Hunters Rite of War, the one where Space Wolves can come on from a table edge, can outflank from any table edge. And he took Sanguinius in a drop army and started off fine. And then I brought my power hunters on, and he's screened off that area with a load of troops, so I could only limit what I could kill. He was like, "Oh, this game, this, you know." I mean, to be fair, like the outflank, I don't know if you've looked at the outflank rules, but you place a marker now, and then you roll, and if you roll a 2 up, you can move it 6 inches, and if you roll a 1, they can move it a lot. It's really easy to put your marker in a place where they can not let you get anything out of reserve, like without you then having to blow up a rhino or something, which isn't always easy. So we played around with that, and that worked fine. And my space was sort of moseying around. I got some Tartarus Terminators hiding behind a Spartan. I've got a Spartan with some Cataphractii and some Tartarus hiding behind it.
That feels entirely thematic. I can see that.
Like as cover, because he's going to drop down. I was like, just keep them alive, and bless him. He learned a lot about 30k, the differences between 30k and 40k. So his, what's the combat unit?
Dawnbreakers.
Dawnbreakers, yeah, they came down and ruined stuff.
They're pretty potent.
His unit with the Volkite.
Angel's Tears.
Pistols. Angel's Tears, those are the ones. They came down and ruined a unit. I was like, ooh, this is interesting. He had a Leviathan with a melter cannon and claw.
Was he playing one of the Blood Angel Rite of Wars, the Revelations, or Day of Sorrow? Not Day of Sorrows, Day of Revelations.
If he did, because Sanguinius allows. I think it's Sanguinius that allows you not to. Oh no, it might have been the Rite of War where you don't scatter, you don't even roll.
Yeah.
You just put
Sanguinius used to do that. I can't forget if he's done it, if they've carried that over.
I can't remember if it was him or the Rite of War, but I took a list that I thought, okay, is this the kind of list that I then want to play? What do we have? A Master of Signals, because I want some deep strike defense. So for those who don't know, Master of Signals means you mishap on a 1, 2, or 3 when you come down, rather than a 1, and you can shove them off the table, which is nice. Well, not quite, but you know what I mean. A Delegatus to allow me to take Power Hunters, and because he's cheaper than a Processor. A Herald to go in the Varagir to make them scoring. 15 Grey Slayers, 13 Grey Stalkers, 10 Tax. Oh yeah, so my outflanking units were 8 Death Sworn, 8. Sorry, what was it? 8. Oh no, I brought the Slayers, the Death Sworn, and the Stalkers on, and left the Terminators on the board to start with. Partly just because of the nature of knowing that stuff was going to drop around the middle. Whereas, another time I'll put 8 Tartarus into outflank because they're great and they can run and then charge when they come on. What else did I have? A Contemptor Dreadnought with Gravis Melter Cannon, Fist, and Havoc Launcher, and Leviathan with Twin. So it was 5 Varagir, 8 Tartarus, 8 Death Sworn. Yeah, so not a huge army, but kind of a bit of everything, see how it goes. So he came down, and shot like the Stalkers to pieces with Volkite, and charged the Slayers with his other unit and just ripped them to shreds. Didn't do much to my what do we call them? Death Swarm. So my Leviathans opened up on his Leviathan turn 1 and gone off like 12 shots with the thing, and they're rending 5+.
This is the twin storm cannon.
Twin storm cannons, yeah.
Nice.
Hitting on 2s, like 3s first turn because it was dark, and I was like, take 4 wounds, 5. It's not bad. They are not bad guns. I initially took them to deal with units, but 5 up rend on a strength 7 gun. Even if you want to fire a heavy tank, you've got so many shots. I'm like, I can see a twin. I mean, they're only 24-inch range. You're going to move up, but I like that. I think that's cool. So he tried to deal with that because he knew that when Sanguinius came down, there's a chance I could just shoot Sanguinius. which is what I did. When Sanguinius landed, I was like, yeah, I'll put some Leviathan Storm Cannon shots into that. And he rolled quite well on a save and only took 2 wounds, or maybe 1 wound.
Mm.
I was like, you could do some serious damage because he bought, and this is where, because he plays 40k at the moment, he bought Sanguinius down outside of a unit, just by himself, which allowed him to do other things. But what it meant was the next turn I could then drive 5 Varagir up, get them out with 2 characters in, and then run 8 Tartarus up the other side and charge them both into Sanguinius and then challenging out the champion. And he absolutely ruined that poor little champion. And then there's a lot of attacks hitting on 5s with all my HQs having Great Frostblades, which are initiative +2 strength, AP2 weapons, and then Thunderhammers, Chain Fists, Lightning Claws. Primarch's not going to survive that. No matter how good they are in this game, if you can get past the unit and hit them, you're going to do some damage with that many hits. And
the challenge mechanic there just makes that a nightmare.
Yeah, and he,
which is what you have to plan for that.
Yeah, and he was quite happy to learn the hard way. That's a lesson that you learn, and you go, I won't be doing that ever again. And things like making sure you've got a champion or another character in the unit with them as well, so they don't get drawn out even in those fights. All that kind of stuff. So I didn't really get to see what Sanguinius does, full on. But he also charged my Death Swarm, or my Death Swarm charged him, his Angel's Tears, and he didn't like the Death Swarm. They're not as good as they used to be because you only get 1 attack if you die before you get to hit. But when you can have a Great Frostblade on one of them, and they come with power axes, rad grenades.
Oof.
It's not bad. I mean, just the rad grenades and the Great Frostblade means instant deaths. It's just nice.
It's the rad grenades. Yeah, I forgot that they are the sort of destroyer
and the stasis bombs, which means if you charge them, you're automatically disordered.
Yeah,
they're good. I mean, they're expensive. 8 is 350 points, and they're heavy.
That is pricey
as well. So what else have they got?
I'm surprised they're heavy.
Are they heavy? Yeah, they are infantry heavy. So you can't run them. So you have to get them up there somehow. They got 2+ save. So I'll be tempted to put them in the Spartan.
Why Spartan, not a Land Raider?
Spartans are so much more survivable.
Yeah, fair enough.
The flare shield with las cannons now having Sunder. Just so much more. It's not even just survivable. Less chance of being immobilized. It's a lot of points for the Spartan, but if you've only got 1 combat unit that you want to put in something,
you need it to be
worth
there.
Yeah, big time. In fact, I found, because in that game as well, a Spartan with a searchlight, you've got power of the machine spirit. You can fire all your guns at different targets. You can light up.
That's a thematic choice, isn't it? You could go smaller, multiple combat units spread across a couple of 2-3 Land Raiders, or you go all in with a combat unit supported by other.
With something like
in a Spartan.
Yeah, with something like Pale Hunters as well, where you've got 3 units coming on at the back. You only need that 1 unit. And as I say, the first time I took the Spartan and played Giles, and he's got a 10-man las cannon squad, and I'm like, right, cool, searchlight, 2 las cannons into that squad, and he's like, well, I'll use my reaction now before I lose 3 or 4 las cannons. And even with 10 shots hitting on normal ballistic skill, re-rolling, he got 3 6s. And it's actually, cool, you roll quite well, fine. But then that squad can't retaliate for the next unit shooting at it, and I don't have to worry about those las cannons for the rest of the game, and the Spartan's safe until a melter gets within short range, but you can back up. And he went to fire his melter. He went to fire, one of his, he moved the dreadnought up and was like, fire. I was like, I've got a flare shield, you can't hurt it. So, there's not a lot out there that's strength 10. There are things. Now, some people are taking Grav as an answer to that kind of thing. So it's not necessarily...
Grav's not super widespread, though, is it?
No, a few units can take Grav.
Contemptors can.
yeah, there's other units that can as well. I can't remember off the top of my head. Um, so it's not straightforward now. But the beauty again, you've got Spartan. Like the amount of people who played Space Wars playing against Sons of Horus against Giles, and he's pushed right at me. So I was like, don't want to get out this turn, so I backed up.
Hmm.
Buy yourself another turn. Like people don't always think that way. They better move forwards. It's like, well, that's suicide. Like keep them alive. Um, but yeah, having a Spartan with a searchlight gets around a few things.
Hmm.
It's not always going to be the answer.
I think that's quite good advice. It's quite an interesting conversation, sort of piece of that you wouldn't necessarily think about. I think the first thing, in all the various chats and groups and things I've seen, people are talking more about sort of what can it kill, what's it a counter to, what's this. That's a more of a utility piece, which is quite interesting. Like this, you making a point about Searchlight. That comes from playing games where you've suddenly been hampered or where things are not performing because of the mission, which people wouldn't necessarily have thought through, or the game type rather. Or wouldn't necessarily have experienced rather than thought through.
And it depends. It depends how. At the moment, if one of you wants to use night fighting, on a turret we use night fighting. Like if that's going to be the way the game moves going forward. Now, augury scanners ignore night fighting. Night lords ignore it completely. But searchlights are the other one. And if you put searchlights on things that are hard to kill or things that people don't really want to shoot at, then you can get around a little bit of that. One or two searchlights across an army might be the thing I do. Because augury scanners I almost think that augury scanners didn't need that. I understand why they've got it. I think with their being powerful against deep strike and whatever, you didn't need that on top of it, which now, like, 10-point upgrade for a unit to intercept a unit deep striking, that's great and really good and powerful and cool. But it also means you can target stuff in the shooting phase if it's over 24 inches, blah, 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 blah. Oh, well, I mean, that's definite. Like, I'll take a few, But yeah, so it was a good, fun game. In fact, I'm playing him next week, I think. So we'll have a slightly smaller game and hopefully try out some different stuff. And he's really learning. I don't think he played any 7th. He really came into 40k in 8th. So, there's a lot to learn there as well as all the different 30k kind of stuff. But next game, I will be using some Sons of Horus.
Ooh.
Because I'm going to Company of Legends next weekend and I'm borrowing Giles' Sons of Horus for that.
Nice.
So got a Spartan in there as well for fun.
Okay.
Because you're not allowed. There's no special characters at the event, and I might have taken Abaddon or Abaddon if there were, because he's pretty baller and allows just down to deep strike for free. So, but without that, again, getting them up the board, all that jazz. So, yeah, I don't know.
Cool.
We'll have
Sounds like a fun game, though.
Yeah, it was a fun game. It was a bit kind of pushed because lots of rules needing to be looked up and stuff like that. Still a little bit of that going on, particularly with someone who's new to the game. And then just kind of that understanding of exactly what units can do. Like when he fired 40 Volkite shots or whatever it was into a 13-man unit of Grey Slayers. And he's like, oh. I'm like, yeah, that'll work. There's one left over, and he ran off and held an objective. He's like, that bloke's holding an objective. I'm like, yes, he is. But yeah, no, it was good. It was good. There's a number of Heresy games being played at the club, which is all good.
So people are generally enjoying it. I mean, I've heard, and I forgot who mentioned it, but that it sold very, very well. As in, the launch has been considered one of their biggest successes.
You only have to look around on. So on my Instagram, my Twitter, particularly my Twitter's multi-game. A lot of time in the fantasy community and a bit in 40k and various others, and just seems like every other person's got a box and is doing something with it. there's blogs appearing from people I didn't even know they played the sci-fi
Mhm.
side of the games, that kind of thing. Um, it's hit big, and then the price structure. I mean, there was a conversation on a Discord about this actually, about how reasonable the Tartarus and Cataphractii Terminators are. Was it?
Mm.
It's with Element at the moment with the extra with the 20% off. It's like £44 for 10.
Yeah.
Like, compared to what they could have been, and it's like, yeah, GW are pushing this hard.
Yeah. And by the sound of it, it's been very
Well
effective.
received. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it just offers that something different as well.
Yeah.
I think 40k and Age of Sigmar, there are elements of those two games which I get frustrated at compared to playing older 40k.
Hmm.
The elements of older 40k and fantasy, which I'm like maybe a little bit slower in the build up. Like there's
Yeah.
more build up in the game, and while 30k doesn't quite go there, it does things which allow that. It's the fact that you're deep striking and outflanking from turn two, which you're not getting that on turn one, which you can get in Age of Sigmar particularly potentially. I mean, they've removed it a little bit. It's not as bad as it was.
Hmm.
But both those games, 40k and Age of Sigmar, you seem to have stuff charging each other turn one quite.
It's
There's
easier.
huge movements across the board,
Mm.
and I'm like, let's just like we're allowed a turn to manoeuvre before we get into the action. Old fantasy sometimes 2 or 3 turns, but it almost made that the last 2 or 3 turns worthwhile.
Yeah.
But yeah, who knows? So yes, that's my weekend. Next weekend, dear say no hobby. I'll be up in Durham. Be dropping into Warhammer World on the way up to see
Sounds
who's
like a pretty
around.
good weekend.
Yeah, should be good. Should be good if I can stay awake. It'll be wonderful. So yes. Anyway, should we talk about what GW have been up to?
Rather than just us, yes. What a
I've
good
got
idea.
hundreds of tabs open on my computer. It feels like. Should we go with? Should we just do? Should we do the Heresy Thursdays? So we've had Death Guard helmet and shoulder pad sets, World Eater helmet and shoulder pad sets, and I don't know if anyone noticed, but some Space Wolf helmet and
I
shoulder.
think that went pretty under the radar, didn't it?
What do you think of Death Guard?
The Death Guard helmets.
Yeah,
I think they did a good job with those. I like them. I certainly think they
I'm,
look good on the model. I think
hmm,
that look very cool. I think. Do I
I
like the
don't.
fact that
I'm
there's
not a
this?
fan of the pointy top, but that's an aesthetic thing. I think I would cut them off and they'd still look good.
I think they would still look good. I actually think it looks fine. I actually think with any of them, I think it looks cool on
You're
Death
wrong.
Guard, of all things.
Yeah, no, it
You're
does.
wrong.
Yeah, yeah. It's just something I'm like, yeah, I could see me cutting off a few of those. And the shoulder pads look really good on those Death
I think
Guards.
the spike looks good because of the studs around it. The
Yeah,
shoulder pads are cool. I'm surprised it's as big as it is. The Death Guard logo. I mean, I'm nitpicking. It looks cool. It works with the
yeah,
Mark
yeah.
Six.
No, I see. I understand what you mean. I
It
just
works
closed
with
the
the Mark
window. I
Six, and
don't
I
know.
think there's enough variation across the little set of heads that they've got as well.
Yeah,
I
just
also like
closed.
the unhelmeted head, and I like the sergeant as well.
Yeah, Sergeant's cool. Trying to find the window that I've closed. I don't know what I closed. Oh well, it's all part of the fun. It might be the World Eaters because I can't find them at the moment. The World Eaters ones look cool. Um,
I liked the World Eater ones. We had a long chat about those. They really split opinion in my gaming group over those who liked it, those who just didn't like the aesthetic of it, and then
right.
comparing it with what had gone before. They were surprisingly divisive.
Let me have a little look, see if I can bring them up again. There was something out that I was a little bit like, let's see if I can find it. That's a good question. How good is their search engine on the community site? You type in World Eaters and you'll get everything with World and Eaters on it, won't you? That'll probably be the one. Oh, there we go. Corn Day. Like, so the World Eaters ones are weird. Like, I like the helmet head. I love the helmet head. I quite like the Champions helmet, the way they painted it.
Yes,
I'm not a massive fan of the over the topness of those, um, those ears, as it were.
I'm sort
But
of surprised they're not a bit lower.
yeah, I'm kind
They're,
of glad they did them.
they're sitting quite high, but I think they look cool.
Mm.
I think it was an odd choice to put them on a white background. I'm
Yeah,
looking at the article
that
right
could have
now, and you
helped.
think that's actually quite hard to see them. Whereas on the black background, they just look a lot
They
cooler.
pop. Yeah, and they're not eating any worlds on their shoulder pads.
No, I saw that. Yeah,
Still
they
beautiful.
look plain, which is slightly
Do a
odd.
little bit, don't they? Yeah, it's curious. It's a curious one.
Also, an interesting choice of blue.
Yes, a bit
This
different.
is more just interesting, isn't it?
I just, yeah, you know what? Like, this will lead into a topic we're going to do later on. I almost just don't care. Like they're blue and white.
Yeah.
Like it's
No,
just a different
absolutely.
colour.
It's just interesting. I find it interesting. I don't
It's
find
not
it a
the color.
problem.
It's not the normal colour they're painting blue. It's not the colour that art paint the blue. It's not the colour that most people would paint the blue. But I just don't care. It's still blue
Yeah,
and
who
white.
cares? It's cool to see variation.
Yeah,
I
indeed.
think that's fine. And
Variations
particularly
on a
across a
theme.
very large
Oh,
legion. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So that's cool. And then we did get some Space Wolf film.
We did. We certainly did, didn't we?
So
And that was
yeah,
a real doozy.
that was an interesting day. So shoulder pads, they're cool. That's the logo. I think I almost prefer the 40k logo than the 30k logo.
Mm.
Again, style choice. The helmets. Now, if I was going to commission if I was a manager and said, right, we need some Space Wolf helmets, I wouldn't even consider doing what they've done. It
Yeah.
wouldn't even cross my mind. We were talking about this before recording. I'd almost be tempted to say I want 10 helmetless heads and
Mm.
one Space Wolf head in there. They could have done interesting things around the more based on the upgrade packs for Grace Layers that they've
Mm-hmm.
done. Like they could have incorporated some of the like the G-Jaws they have there and the leather or what have you. They could have done all of that. What they've done is put the one novelty helmet that you want that every Space Wolf player's got lots of because they're on sprues,
Mm.
and is nice for. Okay, it's a weird. It's sometimes isn't certain people find nice to have one or two dotted around. Maybe give it to a special character or a sergeant. Cool. And they've given us 10 of those. There's 8 exactly the same, or 7 exactly the same. 2 with rune things on the middle of the head, and one with a top knot and a rune head. I think they made the wrong choice. I think once they've made the wrong choice, they've then not embellished them in the way that they have done the others.
Mm.
And I just don't know. And there will be the odd person who loves these, and that's fine. That's cool, wonderful. It's not even that it's like 40k or anything like that for me. It's just doesn't fit.
I completely agree. And it's hard to. I haven't seen anyone put it in a particularly balanced. So sometimes you'll say, oh, you'll find one or two people who'll go against the grain and go, actually, I like them for this reason. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, cool. Not for me, but I get it. I haven't actually seen anyone do that with these. It
I've
just
seen
seem
one or two
really
people
odd.
say they like them.
It's hard, yeah, but they like them as you say, in the one-off. It's just really hard to see the thinking behind a whole set like that.
Yeah, because and I think I have seen one or two people, and I mean I was on the Forge World threads, so like one or two people were like brilliant, and they might be, yeah. It kind of goes against what they've like. I don't necessarily like some people. Yeah, you've seen a lot of vitriol about they would never wear these. It's like, well, I think they've even described one or two in the background,
Mm.
and having one or two in an army. Even the old 40k character that had a wolf head. I think when I was young, when I was in my teens, when I got into it, early teens, I was like, super cool Space Wolves. And even then, I don't think I really felt that. Like I didn't really buy into it that much.
You still tend to like Space Marines first, and the wolf aspect second.
Partly because the head would have to be tiny to have fitted in it. Right.
I do wonder, looking at them, because I was sort of trying to rationalise the design decisions and things. I do wonder if they were looking at it and you sort of thought, well, here's an opportunity to do something. These are Mark 6 helmets. These are going to the Mark 6 kits.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if they're looking at the beaky helmet and thinking, what can we do
Snout.
with that? It's a snout. Well, here we go. We're going to run with this. But it just seems like a curious choice.
Yeah.
With some of the other things you can do with Space Wolves, like the knotwork, the sort of Celtic-ish background, the references there. There's some cool things you could do.
Talismans, runes.
Yeah. Interestingly,
Right,
with these helmets, they suit all helmets so far, with the exception of, well, I suppose there's 2 legions of the ones they've shown so far. White Scars and Emperor's Children are slight decorations on the Mark 6 helmet, whereas the others have all very dramatically gone to be quite stylistically different to the Mark 6 in some ways, so giving you variations. These have done very much done that, but in such a way that it is, I mean, something I think that isn't, you don't see as much of as I would have thought, and it never really occurs to me to do it, is people taking Legion helmets for a different Legion and using them in their own for something else, particularly when they look a bit like Mark 3, or they look a bit like Mark 2, or they just look like a cool variant. Those Death Guard helmets for that. I mean, Fafnir Ran has got a spiked helmet, albeit it's covered in straps and things to go on the back of his shield. But you think, well, actually, these things can be used across legions. No way with the Space Wolves one. I just can't quite fathom the thinking behind. Yeah, let's do 9 of them like that in the set.
It would have been amazing, bearing in mind how many people go to Chaos Marauder kits, like the Marauder Horseman kit particularly, and the old Space Wolf kits for heads, and dig around for the odd head here, and like just coming up with 10 helmetless heads and one with a helmet with this, with that, like everyone would go, oh, that's really cool. Don't like the Space Wolf helmet, no worries, because I've
still got 10 helmets, 10 heads that I can use. Yeah.
What's interesting though, because the World Eaters helmets are, I mean, they're not. That's not a Mark 6 helmet.
Well, no, exactly. This is,
So,
I would argue
they didn't
neither is
have to follow the Mark 6 pattern.
No.
They could have, as you say, they could have gone a different way with it.
Which I would argue is the same with the Imperial Fist ones. I think the Dark Angel ones. They're variants.
They've made the decision. It is what it is.
Absolutely.
I suspect they are going to sell very, very few of them.
Which is a shame.
It'll be really interesting to see if they sell so few that they revisit it. Which, who knows? Either way, I mean, it's the one lucky thing for Space Wolf players, you have got a wealth of other bits that you can get.
Well, indeed.
Probably more than any other Legion, so that's not a major issue. Okay, let's move on to more positive stuff. What do you think of the Emperor's Children Praetor?
Love them. Love them both. I think they're both very cool.
Yeah, we had the release, didn't we? Did we have the release of the Power Armored one?
Has that already happened?
I can't remember if it came out or not now. But we've got the Tartarus one now, haven't we?
Yeah, all right.
That's the one I was referring to, is the Tartarus one.
Love it. I think it's very cool. I think it's very EC. I think it's quite a bold choice with the helmet, and I think it works. And I think it's got a very sort of sinuous something about it that's very Emperor's Children, because there's a lot of overlap between the ornamentation you tend to see in Emperor's Children and Blood Angels.
Yeah.
And this is what I like about this is very distinctively. Certainly, there are elements of it, the head in particular, that are very distinctively. This is Emperor's Children. I like that they they're exploring a space that is uniquely them.
I want a better picture of that power sword, because that looks really cool in the photos.
Yeah.
The blue inside.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, you're right. The Sonic, whatever you want to call it, on top, is interesting. I quite like the feel of it. I think it works quite well. A lot of people loving the Volkite, Combi Volkite on the go.
Yeah.
The helmet did remind me of a snapping turtle.
I saw someone do a comparison with the tanker bug from Starship Troopers, and once that had been pointed out, I now can't unsee it, but I still like it. I still think it's cool.
It's a bold design, and you can just put another helmet in there if you want. Like, or whatever.
It's even it's picking up on cues of a sort of bird's beak. I think that which is
Yeah,
picking up on obviously the eagle, the palatine thing. Yeah, I'm a fan.
yeah,
Looks going
it
to look
works so
great.
well. And
It's
the
going to look
gold,
really cool with the Phoenix Terminators.
yeah, gold, purple, and green is just such a good combo of colours as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah.
That
Agree.
makes it stand out
I know. I like the
absolutely.
silver.
Well,
Actually, the silver
and
of
the
the
silver.
shoulder pads. That's the bright silver. Looks really
It's a
cool.
bit different, isn't it? Like if that wasn't, I would almost think of doing a white there, but the silver works
Hmm.
in
But
in a
when you go
different
that
way.
high, silver, like a white aluminium
Yeah,
or a white gold, you're just going that high. I think
it's cool.
that's very cool. Yeah,
It
I love
works.
it. It's got a very and there's a sleekness to it. The silhouette is really interesting, where it all sits together really quite
Mm,
well. Very Empress Children. I like it. Perfect. Well, perfect. Yeah,
indeedly
how appropriate.
doodly. Okie dokie. What else do we have? The Land Raider.
Uh, Indeed, I'm
Still a
very
good
much looking
budget
forward to
though.
that kit. Very much looking forward to that kit.
Yeah,
Love the
it was
little.
nice to finally kind of actually for them to show it off. Um, One of those things, like they've got a lot to show. Yeah, it might already be out there, but uh, they have schedules and things to keep to. Let's have a look at that Land Raider. This might be one of the ones. There we go. Land Raider Proteus. Um,
And the sort of the clarification that you've got these two versions of it, the Explorator and just to see them next to each other and compare. I really quite like the sort of assault variant that is taken over from the Phobos. I think that's rather
yeah,
nice.
You know what? I'm actually more of a fan of the modern Land Raider. Um,
Really?
I understand why people like this. I am more of a fan of the modern Land Raider, but it is kind of funky.
Hmm.
It's
I
it'll
personally
be
prefer the armored version. I think the armored version looks
right.
badass.
Yeah, just look, trying to work out kind of how long it is. Like comparing it to the, so it's like
I've
one
seen some
whole
people
stud
mock up.
shorter on the top. If
Yes.
you
Oh,
count the
okay.
studs
Is that all?
across
Just one?
the top, just one. There's five there, and on the
Yeah.
Spartan there are six,
Oh, that's
corner to
interesting. I
corner.
saw someone mock up a Land Raider using the parts labeled Land Raider that go in the Spartan. You can
Yes.
mock up the track unit, kinda.
And what also makes it look smaller is that whole boarding ramp is pulled right back into between.
Hmm.
Like so, let's say it's only one kind of bolt shorter on the tracks,
Hmm.
but also the front is pulled right back. The middle of
Yes.
it's pulled back a couple of inches almost. It's like
Yeah.
there's a decent length on that, which is
Yeah.
pretty
The
cool.
Spartan is quite a bit because, as you say, it's taking a cue from those original conversions that were done, whether it was the Rhino hull that projected
Yeah.
out away, and it the modern Spartan does that as well, obviously,
Mm.
which which is cool. But this is quite the sort of snub version, which I think is really. I just like them. I think Land Raider is just such an iconic
Oh yeah,
vehicle,
I'm absolutely
particularly the
plastic,
Heresy.
mate.
Love it.
Yeah, and when we talked earlier about the Spartan being, that much more survivable than Land Raider,
Mm.
Spartan is also 300 million points or whatever it is with the flare
Yeah,
shield, and you need the flare shield to make it that much more survivable. So your other option is, three Land Raiders. Like,
yeah, yeah.
they can play a part for sure, particularly if people are thinking that tanks aren't worth taking, which I think I'd dive into the counter on that, and I think even rhinos are worth taking.
Mm.
So who knows?
No, I think it's clearly going to be a popular kit. And having
Oh,
built a Proteus Land Raider not that long ago, beginning of the year, and it took me 3 days of
yeah,
fairly big hobby sessions in resin. It's not to be underestimated what a kit that was. I felt satisfied, and it was an armored version, but still, that was a piece of work. Whereas the plastic one, not going to have any of that, and you get all the weapon options and all the rest. Looking forward to it. Don't know how far away it is. Probably a distance, I'm guessing, or maybe not.
well, yeah, who knows? Who knows? Not even worth worrying about, is it? Really? Unless
Well,
you
no,
want
just
anything
it's
coming
just
up
one.
in
No, it's just
E3.
say I'll get it and then won't build it. So as we said before, but
Yes, exactly.
just nice to speculate, which is that we're seeing all these things up front because we've got a preview coming up, haven't we? At Nova.
We have Nova. I was going to get onto that. So we've got. So this won't be out. This will be out just beforehand. So the Nova preview, which what we got: 40k, Age of Sigmar, Warhammer Underworlds, and Warhammer Horus Heresy. So only 4 things. So I'm considering that we might get some decent. So that Warhammer Underworlds must be full showing of the new box. Don't know with the rest of it. Suspect Warhammer 40k will get more of the League of Rotan.
Yes, because they've specifically mentioned they've held back some significant things for that, and I'd imagine they might preview the army box. If there is an army box, I'd imagine there will be.
And I think there'll be a big tease for something coming next year. I've got a feeling there might be a tease trailer on 40k.
Okay.
Yeah. I think there'll be something. Sometimes they do the tease of the tease.
Yes, I'm just surprised it would be this early. I could see that coming in November, that sort of period. But yeah, could do.
Potentially.
Age of Sigmar, we'll see. But Age of Sigmar, I'm not expecting a huge amount for Heresy.
There's some rumours going around about more plastic troops and stuff like that, but who knows? There's a lot they could show at the end of the day. But yeah, that's
the other thing we had. The other thing we had.
Thursday the 1st.
I won't be staying up.
No. As someone said to me last time, it was like, "Are you going to be awake for the? I think it was the Adepticon one at 3 a.m." I'm like, "It will still be there at 6 o'clock in the morning when I wake up."
And yet, I still stayed up and did it. Watched the bloody thing. That was the Heresy trailer, wasn't it?
Yeah, and if I don't go on social media, it will still be the first thing I see, and I will still be excited because I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
So,
there was just something cool about it. That it was such a
and
momentous thing. But
just,
this one, not going to be doing quite the same thing because I'm not anticipating it being quite the same.
When I'm up at 6 for work and whatever, and the baby
that's not far off it, is it?
Yeah, not doing that.
We did have a Heresy adjacent, well, it is branded as Heresy release as well. Release,
Indeed,
it is a release because it's coming soon. Isn't it? Yeah, I did.
You did. I need to buy the book.
Good luck.
I've played. Yeah, I think it's come back into stock.
And I think it went out again.
Some of the stuff. I think the cards came back into stock.
I didn't think the cards or the board went out. We should probably talk about what it is.
No, keep them guessing. Aeronautica Imperialis, the Horus Heresy. So it's a minimal Horus Heresy of the rules. Rule book is in American dollars is available.
Yeah, in American dollars it is, but not in
UK
the Queen's English.
No, it's temporarily out of stock online.
Oh, that's good. There was a rumor going around that was it. It was gone, done.
Oh, if it's sold that quick, they're going to reprint it.
Well, exactly, and which is why I didn't believe that particular rumor. Yeah. Temporarily out of stock. Yeah, okay. I'm really surprised the cards and the board didn't go because that in the past they have gone quick for.
Yeah, I wonder if they made
box games
plenty more because it's Heresy and it hasn't sold quite as well as they thought. I don't know, or maybe they prepared better.
Maybe. Quite like the board as well, and quite looking forward to getting Story of Anaheim. That'll be Anaheim in the Heresy. I think that'll be quite fun.
Yeah, indeed. That's part of the reason I do. I just need to add it to the list.
For anyone who hasn't had, I've seen varying opinions on Aeronautica as a game, but in terms of models, all of the Aeronautica models, in particular the Thunderbolt. The Thunderbolt is one of the most fun to put together kits out there. Where
really
you look at it, it's so well designed. You sort of look at it. You cut 2 pieces out, and or 3 pieces, and you're sort of holding them together, and then suddenly you've got a little plane. Like, what? How did that happen? They just look so good. It's such a good scale for this game.
The game is very much a modern miniature cross-board game. It's simplistic. It's fun. If you wanted to play it really seriously, it's got issues.
Yes.
cool, whatever. Uh, yeah, I enjoyed it. It has to go on the list of things to
The
purchase.
Xiphons, similarly, good fun kits. The Thunderhawk, which the Thunderhawk, when you look at it, you think that's expensive. It's a big kit. It's bigger than a Titanicus Reaver.
Yeah, it's bad, isn't it?
It's huge, this thing, and
Mm.
it's a fun kit to put together. The Storm Eagles are very cool. Little dinky ones are great size, fit in the palm of your hand. It's great. The Xiphons are fun. And it's got. I still think it's quite a reasonable. I mean, 6 Xiphons for £28 from GW Direct
Yeah,
isn't bad.
no, not at all.
Cool little game. Cool little side game, I think.
Definitely, definitely. We've had a Mechanicum book. A lot of gnashing of teeth. I haven't. I
Yes.
had it a little bit beforehand, looked through it, but haven't been able to really sit down. And you'll notice that the show hasn't talked about rules much since the release of Age of Darkness. And not really, and we haven't really looked into the game that much. We've talked around it.
Good point, actually.
I wanted to let it settle. I think
Mm.
there's been a lot of a lot of reactionary stuff that's going up online. I've seen Horace Hearsay. Is it Ian? I think it's Ian. It's not Richie. Yeah, I think it's Ian. Just Play Games. He's got his channel, and I've seen him kind of review his tier list at least once and all this. And I'm like, I don't want to get caught up in. And that's fine. That's cool. Ian's content's interesting. I don't want to get caught up in all that. Like, we're going to start looking more at the game as we go forwards. I wanted to get lots of games in and see how it's going. I would love GW to send an FAQ so we could get clarity on a few things, and a Errata FAQ would be really cool. Anytime now.
I think the need for one of those is increasing. I don't think
Oh,
it was
big time.
quite so urgent when it first came around, but increasingly, particularly
There's
with
lots
the
of
release
niggly things.
yeah, with the
And you
release
know
of some
what?
of these extended army lists, I'm thinking that's a bit of
Get
a thing now.
get a bit frustrated with like the questions of how does this rule work? And it's like, well, that's the clear rule. Like, your problem is you want it to work a different way because that's how you feel it should work. Like, there seems to be quite a bit of, oh, it was intended this way. It was like, well, unless you know the people, you don't know how it was intended. So, like, I try and avoid using intended. What you can say is it doesn't fit the pattern of the game and all that kind of stuff, maybe. And so I used to hate FAQs that were like, can I do this? No. It's like, of course you can't. Unfortunately, I think sometimes those questions are needed just to be able to shut the argument down and say. And I know there are people who are doing independent FAQs. They're like, yeah, maybe we can use this one as a community. That never really works. Like the last 2 for 30k have had stuff, and I'm like, that's wrong and that's wrong, but were things that were starting to become accepted. I'm like, but no, they won't be at my events. And then you get this weird thing where it's like, but in this FAQ, someone tried to do it with Warhammer ages ago. We're like, we'll do a standardized thing that everyone plays to, and I'm like, no, because I don't agree with that. So at my events, I will use this, and I don't want people saying, oh, we're using this document. I'm like,
It's kind of always the
official
problem with
document.
unofficial things, isn't it? I mean, they're never going to have the weight.
No.
You wouldn't necessarily have to travel very far and find a completely different community that's doing something else. So that's always the issue with those. However, I thought the work that was done, I thought there's been interesting conversations been reported, have been being had with the, I'm going to say Liber Panoptica, I think is its name.
Yeah, I haven't really looked at their stuff yet.
It's well presented and it was well thought out and it was I thought well intended, and it was very clearly unofficial. This is our take. Might be some fun for you and your mates. It was kicking around to bring in certain units, things like the Caestus assault ram, stuff like that. Before we got the Legends PDFs that were coming around, they revised it and it was presented really nicely. It was done really well, graphically designed, thought through, etc. They have an FAQ as well. Then apparently GW got in touch, super positive conversation. Really good conversation. We don't know what was said, but it was reported. Really positive. Would love them to keep doing it. Please do keep doing it. can you just change the graphic style so it's distinct?
Here's
They
some
said, yep,
guidelines.
here's some guidelines. Can you just do it distinctly? But crack on. Oh, that's brilliant. It was positive all round. I thought the way that was reportedly handled, obviously not being party to it all. But I think it's great. There's a suggestion that it's out there, that they know it's out there. It has its own identity as an unofficial thing and can do its own thing unofficially, and it has some guidelines on how not to tread on any toes, cause unnecessary confusion. People picking up the game going, what? Where did you get that? Is that been downloaded from Warhammer Community, or is it something else when it starts? And you think, yeah, okay. And then there's uncertainty over which version of the game almost you're playing. So I can understand all of that. But I thought it was cool that there's quite a thriving community of those things, including they rushed out an FAQ for Mechanicum because they said they thought there was enough things to answer that. As you say, it's unofficial. So
those are the things that
use at your
I get frustrated with. They did rush out an FAQ, and I'm like, I sometimes think that undermines the other work they do.
Interesting. Okay.
Because it's too quick.
Hmm.
They've and like hands up in the air, like they might not have done this because they might have just done it certain ways. I saw conversations around. There was a gun with similar names with different profiles or something like that.
The Turbo Laser Destructor.
Maybe, and there was conversations around that, and I'm like, you don't know, like there's no way to answer that. But
That
I can see why you choose an option, and that's fine. But when it comes to like, it depends. I suppose it depends how far you go. If there's something that doesn't work within the rules that needs an answer, that's fair enough. If you start getting too deep with stuff too early, you're like, no, you need to go and play it. So yeah,
that specific one, the Turbo Laser Destructor, I think it was, has one profile in the Astartes books and a very different profile, arguably a much worse profile, in the Mechanicum book. Now, Turbo Laser Destructor has been around in Warhammer lore for a long, long time. It's a known thing. It's been in Titanicus and all a bunch of different things. There is another thing. There's a piece of war gear that gives, I think it gives tech priests, or whatever it is, the Magi, an invulnerable save. And Scoria has got something that's named similar, but it's not. It doesn't give as good a save. But it's not the same thing, but it looks like it should be, and it makes that character problematic that they don't have that save. And then there's some interpretation at that point, and you think, I think it's a clearer argument for this, which will never be decided other than with an official document. It just won't be. But it's perfectly reasonable, I think, to put something out, say this is unofficial. This is our group. This is what our group, which might be becoming quite sizable.
I suppose there's an element of, so when in the Titanicus community, one of the YouTube channels, Tabletop Standard, came up with an answer for how rules interacted around destroyed weapons and being what's the term where you shut down with the weapons with the shutdown ability, whatever it's called, the lances and stuff. And I looked at it and I was like, I don't understand how you got to that decision. It seems like you've tried to answer the question and then felt that you needed to add stuff to it to make it fit what you wanted it to fit. And I think if you're going to do that, and again, this is not a comment on the guys doing the heresy stuff, you can't go too heavy-handed. But yeah, essentially you always run into those questions of like you're playing a game with someone and you're using something and then they go, oh, it doesn't work like that. It works like this in the book. Oh yeah, but in this FAQ, blah 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 blah. I've never heard of that. So yeah, it's an interesting one.
It's the value of having those conversations. It's the value of having those conversations before a game. And you say an event, that's a completely different ball game. Yeah. If you're turning up playing 5 games, 6 games in a weekend, then that's different opponents who've got completely different. That's the role of a TO, isn't it? It's a completely different.
Yeah,
world.
I'm not.
But pickup games, you're going to have had that conversation beforehand. You probably had that debate beforehand over the rules or otherwise.
I don't know when my next event will be, but I'm not. I haven't got round to looking at an FAQ yet. And I'm like, let things that are also, I don't want to do all that work and GW actually release their FAQ in 2 weeks' time.
Quite. Yeah.
But we shall see. Anyway, let's move on. We've talked a lot about that. There is some terrain coming soon as well for Kill Team.
There is, isn't there? And quite the quite well, not pace, but they've committed to quite a run of that. That's
that's one to keep an eye on.
quarterly release, I think it is.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how much kind of Zone Mortalis stuff you can make out of that, which will be cool. And we have a couple of books. I'm waiting for my Dawn to turn up so I can start reading that. I started reading Lord of the Rings. I had a reread last year. I was like, I'm going to reread Lord of the Rings, and then I'm going to do Silmarillion. In fact, I did The Hobbit first. So I actually want to physically read them and enjoy the prose in a way that you can't always do when you're listening to it. And I was just starting Two Towers before baby was born. And then I restarted Two Towers again a few weeks ago because I finally had some time to do it and wasn't falling asleep on lunch breaks. And then Dawn's got announced, and I'm like, okay, I can take a break for that. And then Echoes of Eternity got announced straight afterwards. So I'm like, you know what? I'm only a chapter and a bit in. I will start again. It's going to take me years to read Lord of the Rings again. It's terrible. But Echoes of Eternity looks big.
Yeah.
That is a fat spine.
Similar size to Saturnine?
Maybe bigger. Who knows? I've heard that other authors in the series say it's the best one.
It's big. That's a big statement.
Which is interesting. There's trying to work out kind of what I can say. It'll be I mean, it'll be interesting to see. So what do we know about it? What's actually been said here? Angron, Angron has achieved immortality. Angron's coming, baby, and someone's standing in front of a gate. It'll be interesting to see how it goes down in certain circles, because I think, much like a couple of the Siege books, there's some stuff here that doesn't necessarily work the way that some people will think it will work because of the nature of how the rest of the Heresy has been written. So, it'll be interesting to see how that comes along. But it's beastly. So I've got to read Dawn. Make sure I actually read Dawn. And then Echoes.
Do you think you can read Dawn before Eternity arrives?
Well, probably not.
Or Eternity arrives. It sounds very grand, doesn't it?
Probably not. I'm also away the weekend that Eternity arrives up at the event. So, although I was tempted to, when I order it, get it ordered to the event, but then I'm like, am I going to go and sit in my room and read it? I mean, maybe. But
I mean, stranger things have happened with these things. I'm hyped for Echoes of Eternity.
And Aaron will be
very excited about that.
Absolute top anxiety mode for how well it's received and things like that, I'm sure.
Understandable, as I'd imagine they all are when they have one of these things come out.
Yeah, it'll be great. It'll be great. I think there's it's interesting. We're at the close. We're coming to the close now, so you ain't going to please everyone.
No,
it simply isn't going to happen. And there are changes that have to be made that won't allow like that to happen. But hey, it's all good. Cannot wait. Echoes is going to be amazing, and then we're going to be one short story and the final book away from finishing, which will be groovy.
God, that final book as well. The last two books are going to be a serious business. Quite looking forward to Dawn as well. Actually, I didn't go in for the special edition. I haven't gone for any of the special editions of the Primarch's books. I made that decision
just need to read
a long
it
time ago.
First day, and kind of forgot it was available in other formats. But hey, here's what it is.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It's an interesting topic. 6 Primarchs being sent off on one little sojourn would be fun.
Maybe we'll have to have a look at that once we've both read it. So we shall see. Wonderful.
That is
Anything else?
almost certainly going to be after Echoes for me.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I might just have to forge some time to do some reading. Well, I'm travelling up. I won't even be there on the Friday. No, Dawn will be here this weekend. Okay, cool. So I can be sat in Bugman's Friday having a read. And then if not many mates are walking through, I can actually get some reading done. Maybe that'll work. Maybe. Anyway, we shall take a break. We shall come back and have more chat. We roll back the year to 2012. The 23rd of September was a monumentous day. The reason this podcast is here, Games Day. Let's take you back. The National Exhibition Centre in Birmingham, just outside Birmingham. Games Day, a load of kids all lined up, far too excited.
Kids.
And adults.
Was there?
And
No,
adults.
I was going to say, the kids have been pushed. Kids
There
have
were
been pushed to
plenty of
one
kids
side, I think, at this one.
There were then lots of adults pretending, doing that little run you get at concerts when they're trying to cross the stadium. Like, I'm not running, I'm walking.
Oh no, it was far. It was all pretense dropped away.
I saw some things. I saw some sights. 23rd of September 2012, we saw the release of the Horus Heresy as a game. Betrayal, Book 1.
2012, that would make it a nice round 10 years.
Nice round 10 years. Unbelievable, wasn't it? Really. We wanted to just look back over the last 10 years, really, and just put out a few little highlights. This isn't an in-depth. I'm not a researcher. I haven't gone back and written down all the stories of how everything happened. This isn't how the heresy. This isn't a novel podcast. That one's for Willard. About the beginnings of the heresy and all the trials and tribulations that happen with it. Though if Willard wants to commission that and needs me to talk on it, that's a possibility. We were both there, though we did not know each other for another.
That was several years away, wasn't it?
6 or 7 years afterwards,
whatever
it was. It feels like. But it starts before then, really, the Horus Heresy, because, well, I suppose it starts really with Imperial Armour.
Bad war.
Well, so I think it's important. So it's important to remember, because we talk about this kind of thing a lot. There's people listening here who might not even have been playing any Warhammer games like 4 years ago, who are now playing Heresy, and all the things that we like that take for granted now, we just didn't have back then, or were done very differently. Forge World, for a start, back pre-2012, and even up after that, there were whole swathes of the community who had no real idea what Forge World did. They'll see the odd model here or there. 40k tournaments quite often ban the stuff because the rules writing was up and down, shall we say?
It was nowhere near as established as an entity, was it?
No,
it was something that for the longest time it was just conversion kits, it was terrain kits, it was whatever.
Yeah, the odd big kit.
Yeah,
the visibility was
did
low.
busts, didn't they? They did figurines. I think they did for a while. They did niche things that were very much outside the realm of the studio, but that built in a momentum, and Imperial Armour started to make it something else.
Yeah, and the first couple of Imperial Armours were literally like they were more like the old World War II like schematics books, and then rules attached. Like they weren't a cohesive story. There was a little bit of background, and it was just like, here's how to use your models and things like that.
They were a bit like a Jane's, military model thing, weren't they? A military manual. And like, here's a profile on this tank. Here's a profile on this tank, and they did that for different factions, which were great because they added a historic gaming. That's an interesting thing. A historic setting type approach to them, which I don't think we'd really see. Certainly hadn't seen in that depth, anywhere near that depth.
No. But after a few books, they started to develop story. And I don't know when Alan was involved in writing or the other writers. I don't kind of know when that all changed and how that changed. But we got Siege of Rax, which is a fantastic kind of double set, which was a fairly simple story around one siege. Again, introducing a lot of new stuff, which at that time was like, whoa, this is amazing. This is like nothing we've seen. Like big books, expensive book, loads of information about the battle.
So much story in them.
So much story that all tied into the models that they were showing off, but also bringing in old stuff as well. And it was amazing. It was really good. It was brilliant. But what really kicked on from that was the Badab War as a set of books, which is now still held, really highly, even compared to Black books. To be fair, the Heresy books we know, and by all accounts, the Badab War occurred as a 2-book series, as a trial run for seeing if something like that would work, and therefore Heresy would be viable. And this was, as far as I understand it, I could have some details wrong, so I haven't gone and interviewed anyone or anything like that, but all the chat and everything else in the story.
I've heard a similar thing theorised now. That makes me think it was said at a Weekender or something like that.
I think
it might have come from them, but I've heard that suggested.
It's been put out a number of places, but as I say, I don't know specific details, and people might have had variations of the story.
Yeah, we can't quote sources on that. Yeah.
Alan kind of posited the idea of Horus Heresy, and they were like, "Whoa, that's a big horse," That's like it's like Tarantino had to he did a film about it was the Wachowski brothers did a film about cleaners who cleaned up houses where murders had happened, like to prove they could direct a film to be able to be given The Matrix. Because The Matrix was their second film, but they wanted to make, it was their first film they wanted to make, that kind of thing. So this is a proof of concept for the kind of book we're going to get, Badab War. Also, a proving ground for earlier marks of armor and things like that. If we go back, there were people playing Horus Heresy at that time. You had Templars Fugitives, or whatever it's called.
Yes, we discussed them before, didn't we? They did do some. Bella Lost Souls had something, and there was a couple of little rule sets that were exploring it as a setting, and there were some very dedicated modelers.
And we're talking people who are buying metal stern guard, cutting off their right arm to use on a model, along with some Raven Guard bits and some others to make whatever mark of armor they wanted. Because before this, you had Mark 7. You had the odd Mark 6, and then you had bits and pieces, literally, like the odd model might have a Mark 5 arm, or you're going old school. And
you had like 3 metal models, I think, of Mark 5 and maybe 2 of Mark 3 or something. And they were very different.
People were buying 3, 4, 5 different models to cut up to make one model, and that kind of thing was going on. There was a Heresy community back then. Very small. I didn't know about it, not being anywhere near Nottingham and all that stuff. So Badab War then works as a way of producing slightly older marks of armor. And again, at this time, we're talking when Forge World was more settled, but still was very much like, oh, you use Forge World. Like, bit of distrust as much as anything from a lot of people. We were at Games Workshop discussing Primarchs, like, what if Primarchs ever had rules? There'd be 10s all across the board. It would never happen. You couldn't do this. And blah, blah, blah. Too powerful, that kind of thing. Like, I'm sure there were people saying, we will get Primarchs one day or what have you, but the average gamer was like, oh man, like it was just, it was thought, just throwing thoughts around and having fun. And wouldn't it be amazing if, knowing that it would never happen, it just wouldn't happen. But we started to get, as you say, Mark IV stuff coming out. We started to get like the Red Scorpions some stuff in there as well. But we were getting things like Contemptors and things like that were all starting to come before the Heresy was announced. To the point where, as Bad Ad War went on and was really successful, and people are buying more stuff, to the point where people are like, "Heresy, when's it happening? When are you releasing Heresy?"
That's interesting, and you make the point about the Contemptor, because I remember seeing that, and you sort of think, are there certain kits, and we'll touch on this in a minute, because we've obviously had some discussions. The Contemptor came, as you say, came early, but you didn't associate it with 30k, per se. I remember seeing that and thinking, oh, that's cool. They've made the Dreadnought that I had quite a lot of in epic scale, and they've made that into a thing, and you're like, that's cool, but I didn't associate it with 30k, and I don't think it was. Yeah, okay, there were certain things like that you might have seen in the artwork that the Sabretooth card game had shown off. They'd shown off a lot of artwork there, and it was a very slightly, well, I'll say fast and loose.
Yeah,
It had a certain look to it, didn't it? And it covered a lot
sure.
of things. It was a hell of a lot of information in it. So it had Heresy had a certain look, or had been starting to establish a certain look. But the idea of them appearing as miniatures, you thought, too big, too much, not going to be a thing that they're going to touch at
No,
that point.
you're right, and
Even
we
with
had
stuff like Contemptors kicking around.
yeah, and at this point, so like the book series is now 16 years old. 2006, I think, Horus Rising. And we had the Sabretooth game. So there had been developments within the Heresy before the game, not just from Black Library, but the first time we really found out about the Webway project was Sabretooth, I believe.
Yes, it was.
Through that, it was.
Whether that was the first time is a good question, but that was the first time there's some
It
sort
was
of
the first
retype.
time I was aware of it. I think it was the first time it was
Yeah,
really
okay.
put in print. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. Please,
Yeah, no,
please
that
feel
sounds
free to
right.
tell me
It sounds
wrong.
right. I don't have a counter.
I remember reading it going, that's like the hugest reveal. Like, now we know what the Emperor was up to. Of course he went back and did that, because if that had worked, it would have been amazing. Up until then, it was just a great project and whatever. So we had these developments in Heresy, but it took a long time before it became kind of like, what do you want to do in Heresy? There was a lot of build up of, and there was still an element of hope in that as well. I think for some people, they'll tell you there wasn't. Oh, we knew it was going to happen, but it was like, really make the Heresy? You'd have to do Primarchs, and you'd have to do all this other kind of crazy stuff. But sure enough, I say Bad Ab was a massive hit. Still now, people who played it, who own the books, like there are communities now who are going back and playing Bad Ab purely, especially with the plastics. We listened to Henry Steele. He's like his first thing was, I can do my Crimson Fist Bad Ab War Army. Like, that's something that can be done. But finally, we get to Games Day. Well, we had announcements before that, but we get to 23rd of September, Games Day. Us running in to get that book. I had Rob from Edge of Empire podcast, who's been on this, Rob Ing. We knew each other from Fantasy at the time, and he'd put out a message on Twitter or whatever, and I was like, I actually have a spare ticket. Like, if you want it, you can have it. So I had to go and find him much further back in the queue than I was to give him his ticket, because he came down because Heresy was being released. And that was the reason he was there. And there were quite a few people like that. And
my housemate and I, my housemate at the time, went up to that. He hadn't been to a Games Day before. I think he was incentivized because it was something more significant, probably seeing me getting excited around it. Because I remember, as you say, it was a big deal. I mean, we obviously, when we proposed this, say, well, what should we discuss, given that it's a 10-year milestone? Reflecting on that, and particularly on the idea of a theme of I was there kind of conversation, that was a big deal. That because it represented quite a lot, actually. Now, when you look back at it, particularly the significance of it, to me, it was quite a sea change. It's quite a step up for Forge World to say, as you say, Bad Ab War was a step up of one variety. This was a whole other venture, and they had alluded to that fact in what they were releasing. And I think it might have been some of the first times they'd been dabbling with video. And those videos are still out there. I would encourage people to go and have a look for those videos, because they're quite entertaining, particularly if you were around at the time and getting
Well, this
interested in
is
the
it. I
game at
think
that
it's
time. They're
hard.
really interesting.
It's like trying to explain to someone, who's 10, 12-year-olds now that you used to have to use dial-up internet, and if your mum picked up the phone, it cut
Mm,
out, and if you wanted to download a picture, it could take you 4 minutes, like
mm,
and it would crash halfway through, and what have you. Um, it's so alien to think of
mm,
that kind of time for certain people, because we lived through it. And it's only 10 years ago, but
mm.
everything's changed so much anyway, and Games Workshop have changed so much. If you
Yeah.
come
Oh
into the
God,
hobby in the
yes.
last 3 or 4 years, it's unrecognisable. We're talking about a time when still a lot of metal models around, you
Mm,
know, all those kind of things which are really like. I was talking to someone today actually about going away for events, and it's like, now, like, well, everything's plastic, like, or resin maybe. You got to be careful of resin, but if I'm flying and I have metal models in my case, like, it's a
yeah.
pain, all that kind of stuff. Very different environment. You're right. July 2015, we had the teaser trailer, so a fair bit in advance.
And that would have been probably peak forums era. So I'd
Yeah, oh,
imagine
big
there was
time. Port.
some
Oh, I don't know if
excitement
Port
there,
was still
Port and
again. Yeah,
Borseer or whatever it was at that point.
yeah.
Things like that where people are getting there was that's your community because well, you're not quite pre Facebook, but it's
Certainly
not in the
not.
same way.
Yeah,
Socials didn't have
Facebook.
anything like the presence they do now.
They were used very differently back then.
Yes,
Like, yeah,
yes.
no, everyone was poking everyone back then. It wasn't. It wasn't groups and everything else.
Well,
Not
it
the
would have
one.
been. No, you're right, because early days it was all locked to universities as well. You had to have a university address before you could get into them.
Yeah, and
Initially,
even
well,
then,
I'm
it
not
took
sure if
it
it's
took
overlapped, but
took a long time for it to become based. Like, I think for a lot of people now, Facebook's based around groups,
mm, mm,
as much as anything else, and that didn't kick on till much later.
no.
Um,
So there was a big excitement for me when we were talking about this and saying what were those moments. That was a big moment. Was watching those trailers and what they were teasing and the way they were proposing it. Like, I haven't seen something like this from GW before. This is really exciting. I really want to be there for this launch event.
yeah,
And I think they had teased that a Primark was going to be there.
definitely. So were you fully up to date on the book novels at that time and everything else as well?
By that point, yes, I did come to the Heresy books. I did not. I wasn't straight in with Horus Rising.
Oh,
I
you're off
think
the
it was around the
podcast.
point of the third book.
Sure.
I think that's where it came in, where I picked them up, and I was like, yeah, okay, that's where I. That's
Because there was, I think there was an element of Forge World fans. I think there
mm,
was a big element of one of my driving features was background. I want the background, but not necessarily the game.
no, agreed.
Um, and I wasn't sure if I was going to play the game for quite a while.
Mm.
Uh,
The game, actually, now you say that, was completely secondary. Actually, it was
mm,
models and background was what I was in, and you say, well,
yeah.
why the models? But the models as an exercise.
The other interesting fact about that week, that Games Day, was they'd announced they were doing a Black Library Weekender beforehand.
Mm.
And I remember looking at it and thinking, really? Am I going to go to that? Well, yeah, maybe I will. No, it's a lot of money. Really? And then we went to Games Day and we had all the jazz we're talking about. And then they were literally selling tickets there. I can't remember if they did a deal,
I
but they
think they
obviously
did.
hadn't. Yeah, they hadn't sold as many tickets. And literally, there was a guy and a girl with a clipboard. Like, have you thought about going in some Sparkle Barkers? They're called the old stands. And yeah, they were like, have you thought about coming to this? I was like, no, really. And they're like, yeah, we're doing a deal. And I'm like, go on then. I don't know whether that was the best decision I made around that time or the worst. But that was the November or October, whatever it was. That after that wasn't that far off. Um, and and again, I mean, that's different. That's mainly novel stuff. But boy, did they give us like 3 or 4 years worth of novel
Yeah, it
information.
was a very different
Um,
animal then, wasn't it?
Completely different time.
The energy
But
in that first one as well. I remember because the first seminar was with Aaron, and the energy in that room was it was difficult to describe. And I don't think it's been there's probably been other seminars that were similar, but everyone, like, we've got 2 days, we've got a complete weekend of just being immersed in this, and everyone here is similarly engaged. Yes, please. It was electric. It was, and I'd say that Games Day was the same thing. You say about, I mean, I've said this before, but that moment when they opened the doors, there were grown men running just to get in the queue for the Heresy thing. I don't remember there being any children there. Maybe they'd been trampled or whatever.
Well,
I
saw
saw.
was it?
No, not at all. And
Well,
that was what people were keen for. That was the first time I'd seen a hype of that nature. And I saw a guy fall and essentially fall, roll, get up, and keep running. It was like,
it's
this
amazing.
Is what you tend
It's
to see
amazing what
events.
seriously unathletic people can do when they need to get in a queue to buy toys. But yeah, we ended up with, and we're going to talk about some of the big points, I think, or our favourite points or points that stood out, and we have other people's as well to go through. But we had Angron available that day.
A Primarch.
A Primarch.
We thought they'd never make a Primarch, and there was one. And then the suggestion they're clearly going to make the others. You're like, wow, okay, we haven't seen something of this nature before ever. What's this going to be like?
Yeah, mad. What else was it? Did they have like the Contempt of?
It was the Black Book. Well? It was the Black Book, and Angron were the new things. They were the new hotness. Yeah. And I remember them handing them out because you were frightened to death that you weren't going to get it on that day. And they had, I think they even had pallets of them there, but they were handing people a book and an Angron in this beautiful black box. They hadn't. First time we've seen character series. This beautiful black box, silver lettering on it. You're like, this is something a bit special.
Yeah,
this is not a blister pack.
That all plays into it. Like that was a clever decision. Like you're buying a premium product. Let's sell it to you as a premium product.
Absolutely.
Not in a white box or a clear box or whatever else.
It's not a blister pack. You're used to blister packs. I mean, bearing in mind, people talk about, obviously that's a conversation that people have had numerous times with things like Apple and whatever. The iPhone had only been around for 4 years at that point.
Something like that, yeah.
2008, I think that came. 2009, sort of a bit perhaps. So it wasn't quite in the consciousness of this sort of premium experience in the same way that it is now and has been subsequently. So as you say, that was quite a move. It was quite observant, and it clearly worked. It was something that was very exciting to have. I don't remember. We talk about these short video trailers, and like I say, they're on YouTube. Check them out. Forge World, Heresy trailer, launch trailer, etc. I remember one of my big moments, and I can't remember if it was before or after that Games Day, was the trailer where they showed Cataphracti, where they had the first resin Cataphracti kits, and you're like, I've seen those in the Sabretooth things. These look incredible. They're better than the conversions can do because they've gone to town on these. So I've got a feeling the Cataphracti might have been available on that day, or maybe they were more around the weekend.
Well, Damien Turner was there and said, Black Book, where are we? Book 1, Big Ron, and a 10-man heavy support squad.
Oh, right. Okay.
Available for 150 quid. Those prices have gone up a little bit. But yeah, that's what he remembers buying. I think Matt Woodsmith was there as well. Like one thing we used to do at Games Day back in the day, particularly at the NEC, because you had lots of seating around the thing. You could sit up there and peer down on everyone. The NIA was the same, to be fair. But we'd buy stuff and then go and sit up in the seating and eat some food and just like, don't get the food too near the book this time. Like, this is a special book. This is like not happening. But yeah, Matt Woodsmith, my co-host on the Full Stride, it was book 1, flicking through it, just not having a full understanding of what you were looking at initially.
Yeah,
I agree. Out of time.
Your expectations were out of it, and I remember the big deal of what the hell is a legion? And sorry, what? 10 flamers? What? That's unreal. You're like, special weapons aren't in a squad; they are a squad because there's so many Marines. This is blowing my mind. I mean, it was that kind of
even
stuff.
The black books, even the novels, hadn't gone into the sizes of the legions that much.
And what a legion kind of was.
No, and before that, like the previous kind of intonation was a legion was 10,000 warriors. And then all of a sudden we get this kind of codified existence of what legions are and how they work, and it was like the numbers
It was
are. And
how
we
they
had
work
bits
as
of
well
that,
was such a big deal.
yeah, and because the novels do elements of it, but the black books add that layer of definition
I mean, the
around
amount of
it.
thought that had gone into it, the amount of thought and
Oh
care that had gone into it, is what just was just it
no,
was extraordinary, and it still is. I mean, that's the beauty of it. It's carried on, and it set the foundation for that. But that was a real marker that you could see. You were holding that in your hands, and you're like, okay, this is something that's going to be pretty special. And like you said,
yeah,
the next milestone was probably the Weekender, the Black Library Weekender, kind
yeah.
of.
Well, I mean, yeah, that was more books. There wasn't too much around the game in itself,
No,
but the success of that led to the Heresy Weekender,
I
which
do
happened
remember. I'm not sure
six
if it
months
was the
later.
first Weekender, but I do remember being stood at the back of one of the big seminar rooms, and Tony Cottrell was stood beside me, and he had a sort of thoughtful look on it,
Right.
and he was there clearly, and I think we may even have discussed it. He was like, "This is quite a good idea," and he was clearly weighing up. It was at the end of like the second day, and he'd been there watching and seeing if this was something that was going to be successful or was good. And
Mm.
lo and behold, they did their own not long after,
Yeah, it was
as the
6 months
Heresy
because
Weekender.
it was I think it was May.
Mm.
It was because they then moved it forward to
Right.
February because of
So it was the
one
first one.
year.
Mm.
1 year their date was taken, so they had to change date. Um, yeah, you're right. It was yeah, and that weekender was something. That was when we got face to face because we'd had open days and you could go and talk, but the Forge World was always like, again, they weren't that well known and they weren't that forwards and stuff, and you could look at stuff, but this was 2 days of having those guys there. This is back when they didn't have the same control over what their sculptors and that would say as well,
Mm-hmm.
and the rules writers and all that, and we got confirmation that all the Primarch's rules were written
Yeah.
kind of together loosely, like the
Yeah.
basic outline. They
Just
might
so,
change a
is
little
this a
bit.
support Primarch? Is this a fight combat,
Yeah, all that
combat
kind of
Primarch?
stuff, and
Yeah.
how much they've gone into it. Um, yeah, I mean, like crazy. And the weekender, that weekender was like, I mean, the Black Library weekender was great. There was so much going on with it, but the Forge World weekender was something completely different. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you could just go and talk to people, like authors talk to people who weren't used to talking to people like that. Authors are used to people talking in those kind of
Mm.
circumstances. But Sam Egan or whoever was there to chat hadn't necessarily been in that kind of environment before,
Like
and
you say,
sometimes that made it awkward.
at certain open days and games day, I'm thinking of particularly around that same time, there was an element of that. I remember speaking to Darren Parwood in detail
Yeah,
about the emergence of 3D design, 3D printing, and the use of that in the design process and similar for probably far too long at one of the games days. But that was to the power 2 or 3 by the time you got into the
mm,
weekenders and things. So that's, I mean, we talk about those, obviously, we talk about them quite frequently, but the significance of those at the time and the enjoyment of those, really all the events, but particularly the weekenders. But when we talk about moments in the Heresy, now it's evolving, that access, I would suggest that access and that conversation, that shared enjoyment of it, and the conversation with the people who were creating it, and just them relaying how they were creating these things and their passion for it, contributed. That made my appreciation of what it was quite different, I think. I
yeah,
can only assume it did. Hearing any of them, I mean, I'm thinking the ones that stood out for me was obviously Alan had a certain way of speaking on the thing when he sort of would hold the microphone closer to his mouth and he'd have real emphasis on something.
yeah,
Like, his
yeah.
favorite
Well,
one, favorite like
yeah,
Perfidious Eldar, but there's so many other things he could say and deliver. Him and John French, or was it just John? No, just John French talking about um, the Crimson Fist book, which he'd written at the
yeah,
time, and about the combat that was taking place and the boarding actions that were taking place between the fist at Farl, between Fists and Eye Warriors. I think I finished that. I think I was picking up the catalogue while he was doing it and sort of circling breaches as he was talking. It was straight out to the lobby to buy them afterwards. It was just that level of
It
engaging.
was crazy, wasn't it? And so
Yeah.
I've got book one here, credits here. So writing, Alan Bly and John French, writing and games design.
Mm.
Okay, John French was there, book one, working on it. Colour profiles and all that. So the artists we know, like Reese Pugh and all that, kind of there. Rudgie's in here a lot on this. Book design, Paul Rudge. Lovely design book. Heresy background, acknowledgements. Alan Merritt, Jervis Johnson, Bill King, obviously using some old stuff, but also having input in it as well. ADB, Dan Emlett, Graham McNeil, James Swallow, and a load of other writers as well. And then you've got campaign play testers, Alan Bly, John French, Neil Wiley, who's worked on every book since as a writer, Stephen Morris, Kenton Mills, Laurie Golding, Ed Brown, and Rachel Doherty. Like, you know, some of those names. Ed had been around GW a long time. Laurie had been around for a wee while, and of course played a big part as editor of the Heresy series. John's been integral as part of the Black Books as much as anything else. I'm not sure that people are that aware that he's kind of done that. And then models painted by Paul Rudge, Neil Cook, Stuart Williamson, Phil Strasinkus, Blake Spencer, Mark Bedford. Like, this isn't those people, apart from Phil, anyway, Rudgy and that, and Mark are very good army painters who can paint well, but they're not painting the heavier metal style or level.
They're not spending 200 hours on a single piece, are they? Yeah.
No. But yeah, book one, I mean, yeah, phenomenal. As we get on to the Weekender, I think that first Weekender was a massive, like, I think seeing how much the fans appreciated being there as well, like, it solidified the Weekender as a thing, and where I think even more so than the Black Library Weekender to a point, although the Heresy Weekender had its issues moving forwards at a certain point in time, the Black Library Weekender, content-wise, could go up and down a little bit.
You could plot it on a graph, can you? I'd say that obviously Black Library Weekender came first, so it was exciting in itself. It sort of peaked and then tailed off a little bit but it was still exciting.
I think there were other issues around that as well, to be fair. The way GW were handling their writers.
Good point. Very good point. Actually, that was significant. Yeah, so up and down is probably the right way to go about it. And then Heresy came along and was exciting, but they offered different things to different people. I'm very aware, obviously, Michael, he's into the books first and foremost, and having an event specifically for people who were into the books is a very different offering to an event that's spread across. I mean, the Heresy Weekend when it was first was books, models, game, painting. It covered everything, including the books from Black Library. So it was I think it might have even been a shared thing in the very first ones. So it was a different proposition to different people. It meant different things to people. If you happened to like all of those things, it was a nirvana. It was a hell of a moment.
And it was interesting because you had a mix of people there as well.
Yeah.
Like the Black Library Weekend benefits from everyone being into books, and they might be into different books, but they're all into books. So they could be into writing, or they can be into understanding writing.
And this is taking on different kind of thinking to when you were talking about it. Obviously, we're going on at length about it, but that's because we haven't. I mean, who could ever have even considered that there wouldn't be events for the reasons that we haven't been able to have events for 2 to 3 years? And there's nothing on the horizon yet. We hope there will be again. But I mean, people were looking back on those events and saying how great they were, and particularly the early versions, the early iterations of those events. Now we haven't had any for so long. Reflecting on them takes on totally different and quite significant meaning,
I think you're not wrong. I think that statement was true for me beforehand. Like the Black Library, the one thing with the Heresy, you had a real mix of, because you have people there who were there for the books, and then you have people that are there for just the gaming, and then you have people there for a bit of a mix and other stuff as well. And we had, so books 1, 2, 3 came out relatively quickly, and like just stunning as pieces of work. Balance rules wise, could have done with some work, but they were fantastic. And we went and had another Heresy Weekender in 2014. 2014 was the second, and that was, I think, maybe of all that, that was the next kind of big Heresy moment, because 2014 was when you had, as we got people saying on replies and stuff, 2014 was when we had Galvor.
Because you put the question out on the Facebook
Yeah.
group, as far as I recall, and we've already had a conversation about this beforehand, about those moments that were significant to us, and we both said that event. There were particular moments in that event that are very memorable, even this 8 years later. It appears that other people share that opinion. They were calling out the same event, same moments. I mean, the new model seminar was always a big deal. People were very excited by those. That one in particular, that is, to this day, is the only time I've been in a room of, I mean it was probably 200 people in that room, and there were grown men, with no word of exaggeration, screaming when a certain models were brought up on screen. In this specific case, Galvor back, there was two guys behind me. Well, one guy in particular behind me, who just he couldn't contain it. He just let out a full-on scream, and it's even describing it now seems strange, but you could understand it. That was almost the strange thing about it. It wasn't like, who the hell's this guy? Was who's going nuts here and this and but at the time you were like, this is exciting. And we were all caught up in that, I think, to a degree.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if I've got my dates right on some other stuff. We had a load of it was salamanders and stuff shown off, Vulcan, things like that, and then the Galvor back. And the Galvor back were, I mean, they're stunning. They're still stunning now, but also the style.
Yes, I agree.
Was something new. Like they were more than possessed Marines.
Yeah, and it would be really interesting to compare what other parts, even you could even argue Forge World, but certainly what other parts of GW were putting out at the time,
I think,
and what those represented as a much more mature, sort of a considered design aesthetic, which I'm certain has influenced back into other designers who are now working on things. And look at the possessed we've got quite recently. I mean, I think they're being released this weekend. Actually, they're very similar actually to what those were, but when they were first out, wow. And as you said, there was a lot of things that were released that weekend that were all shown that were a big deal.
That first Heresy weekend, I was like, well, I'm not getting into this game. Like, we'll see when Space Force comes out what I'm going to do. And Tony Cottrell proudly stood on stage, and we got the first of the Tony Cottrell promises, which was worth the paper it was printed on, which was, we're going in chronological order. Once we've dealt with ISFAN 5, sorry. I was like, okay, cool, ISFAN 3, ISFAN 5. Prospero's next. Prospero's happens before. And then Cav. Okay, cool. Space Wars are book 4. That's fantastic. Brilliant. 6 books later, we finally got Space Wars. So I told myself no Space Wars. Nothing until Space Wars. 2014 also, I think first saw it when I walked into the display room. The Thanatar was on one of the big displays. And boy, was your eye drawn to that Thanatar. Again, like GW, back in the day, GW didn't drop new factions very often.
No.
Like Ogres, Tau, like they're memorable because they happened in isolation. You might get slight variations on theme now, like League of Voltan. Yeah, cool. Throw that out there. Like, that's a very modern
I'd argue even that's quite a big deal. A new faction.
It is, but
I know what you're saying.
You'll get like a kill team or something and whatever, and so you'll get lots of different design things that are appearing now. And you just did not get that back then.
No.
The Mechanicum as a whole, but particularly the Thanatar, was something so different that I turned around and went and bought a Thanatar as soon as I could. I was like, I'm in. I'm Mechanicum. I'm in. Damn you. I wanted to wait. like, and someone else, I can't remember who said it, but it was like, yeah, Thanatar, Tatara
Yeah.
Stan. Yeah, that's when I jumped on the Heresy train. I think that the Thanatar like got a lot of people. So 2014 was a big Heresy weekender. Like, I forget how big. Like, I think you're right. I think the first Heresy weekender was organised. I think it was just under 6 months. I think it was about since from the Black Library weekender.
Hmm.
The 2014 weekender was planned for a year, and they held stuff back to be announced there and everything else. So it had the benefit of being the first real big, let's show them what we've got.
Yeah.
And man, did they show us what they got. Crazy, crazy stuff.
That was definitely a big one, and the energy around it from everyone, the enthusiasm, and it's interesting you say about the reaction from the fans helped galvanise it to become what it was, and similarly the engagement from them helped the fans. It became a sort of self-feeding thing, didn't it? Self-perpetuating thing. They were feeding off each other in some respect, and helped propel it into being what it was. But those were definitely memorable moments, which I think are certainly, if you talk to a lot of people in the community, they've got moments like that, as we saw from people posting on the group.
Yeah, we haven't even just talked about listening to Alan talk. Like, having John and John, we could hear at Black Library weekend and stuff, and that was cool. Alan was at Open Days and Heresy Weekenders, and the understanding of how much that guy knew.
I think there was something about the format that led into that. As you say, Open Days is one thing. You could go up and speak to a person as an individual, but there was something about the particular format, that seminar format, that lent itself really well to the way it was presented. I mean, particularly the way that the individuals involved, John, Alan, others, the authors as well, speaking about those things, the artists, the sculptors. I mean, their way they could talk and have a forum to do so. It was engaging, and it was memorable.
Yeah, it definitely was, and it was almost a perfect platform for Alan to talk as well, to expand on what he was doing, and it was almost like holding court, because that's not how Alan would come across, because he wasn't, he was much more kind of downplayed what he did. And we talk a lot about Alan. There were lots of people there, like, contributing, and Alan would be the first to say that this guy needs a shout out, and this guy needs a shout out, and all that kind of stuff as well. But he was so good, and I don't know if he knew he was good at doing that beforehand, but he was so good at getting that information across. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. 2014, later that year, we also got book 4. So year and a half in, we had 4 books out. So this is where another thing, when people talk about the speed of books, like, they had book 1, 2, and 3 pretty much ready, and book 4 was a little bit later on, but things slowed down considerably after that straight away. Like, it wasn't normal for that kind of release. But hey, that's all good. It's all good. What do we have next? I'm trying to remember now.
Yeah, Betrayal at Calth.
So much stuff.
Betrayal at Calth was a big
2015. Deal. November 2015. It was a massive deal.
Because there was a barrier, and it's relevant, particularly with recent developments. It was a problem for what the game became, that it was all Forge World all the time, all resin, pretty much. I mean, yes, you could possibly use some of the plastic mainline stuff, but it wasn't ideal, to say the least, and it didn't have that magic in the same way. So it was a bit of a problem, and people have done that comparison and recently and said, just to remind everyone what the Age of Darkness represents, just buying the tactical squads was sort of £400 worth of stuff in 2012 pricing at that. It's like 5 guys was 40 quid or 50 quid or something. It was
Another reason why I went
expensive.
Mechanicum.
Yeah, it was expensive just to get regular tactical
Yeah.
marines, because you had to buy the tactical marine bodies, legs, bodies,
The upgrade
armor,
kits,
etc. You had to buy the weapons, so the
weapons
bolters. What?
kits.
Which
So
bolter
yeah,
do you want? Do you want the bolter kits? Do you want the special weapon kits? What do you want? And
yeah,
it added up quickly. So them announcing a plastic set, an all plastic box set game, was a huge deal. Um, and it was tailor made to be a type of game, a type of box set that lent itself to starting Legion forces. What was it? 30 Mark IV Marines, 5 Terminators, a Contemptor Dreadnought, and 2
a couple of
characters.
characters, two very good characters, one of whom still in use now.
Both of them are.
Well, yeah, but one's sought after.
Oh, I see.
Like
Okay,
the other
yeah, I
one's
see what you mean.
less
Yeah,
sought
yeah, yeah.
after.
I see what you mean.
But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I've just had a look as well. Book 3 was 2014 as well.
I do remember Book 3 seemed to take a while to come along. It was
Yeah,
quite a big deal. It was quite
so
significant. The
I
forces in it
think
were a big deal.
book 4 came on the heels of it quicker than I thought, actually.
I
'Cause
think 1 and 2
book
were quite
3,
close, and then 3 and 4 were quite close, but they were a bit further away.
I was just trying to remember the year. I think that was the year I was at Adepticon when book 3 was announced and released while I was over there. And I queued up for 2.5 hours in America to buy a book to say, don't give me the book, send it to me from Nottingham and save these books for people who are in America.
Wow.
And people kept coming up to me at the front of the queue and asking me questions about the releases and what's available. I was like, no, I'm just English. I don't work for Forge World. It's the first day I met Mr. Rudge, though we didn't really talk much that day. Bless him. But yeah, Trellicath 2015, like a landmark. The first real surge of new blood.
Yes.
Like a big surge of new blood based around that game. Some people even played the game. It was quite fun.
The game, I think, is grossly underrated. There's so many people, and I've actually, speaking to James Hewitt, who was lead designer, maybe designed the game single-handedly, I don't remember, I don't recall, significantly involved in the design of that game, said it was a little tough to see a game that he'd poured some considerable time in, to see people saying, this card stuff, worthless, I'm going to chuck that on eBay for 10p, or I'm going to chuck it in the bin. What I'm after is the toys. Kind of obvious that would happen, but it was.
For your 3
I
sets
played
that
that
you
game.
bought.
Yeah, exactly. That game is genuinely good. I really
It's not
enjoyed
bad.
that. I
It's not
enjoy
bad.
that.
I
game.
might actually. I've got 1.5 sets here, so I might throw that in the old garage to go along with it. But yeah, 2015 saw that. It saw a big boost around
Big moment. Yeah.
what was going on with an expansion, as you say, and by this point, events had started to really take hold as well, like independent events. Like there weren't hundreds, but they were building up, and all of that kind of plays into that being seen a bit more and stuff. Yeah, no, very cool. Very cool. 2016. Yeah, I think we'll go. 2016 saw. Well, we got Prospero. We had.
You're joking. It was a year later.
Yeah. Let me just double
I do
check
remember
on that.
Prospero being a big
Metallicus
deal.
was announced.
Oh yeah, announced. I do remember Prospero being a big deal, because I remember hearing the rumours of what was going to be in that box,
So,
and laughing and saying, "Well,
about
clearly not."
5 months beforehand, if not longer. Yeah, I had those.
Yeah.
October 2016. Yeah, I had those, and I said the same. I said it's ridiculous, and someone got really angry with me, and it turns out that's because those rumours came because someone put the painted models in a cabinet that was in normal persons walking places in the office, not in the bit behind the doors where you needed passes to get in. And it wasn't until someone walked past and went, "What are they doing there? They shouldn't be there." Yeah, the very thought of Custodes at that point was ridiculous. Like,
It just sounded like pure wish listing. You're like, yeah, we're going to put some Custodes in there, some Sisters of
and it
Silence,
sort of sounds
some
weird.
Tartarus. You're like, no, this is ludicrous.
we'd got to that point where stuff was happening. Like Heresy was like all this stuff, and we were like, really, custodies? They're Emperor's bodyguards.
Yeah,
Like, why would they be in there?
they're too special. You're not going to put those in a
Sisters
plastic
of
box.
Silence,
That's mad.
really? Yeah. And again, another wave coming in, but based off Prospero. I don't know if the game was quite as good as the Betrayal.
It wasn't, and there's suggestions why that might be the case, but it certainly didn't have quite the same feel. It went in a different direction.
They made loads more. So I think it was Betrayal. They worked out how many they wanted to sell, doubled it again, and added some more and sold out. They had similar things with Prospero, although it's slightly more limited by the fact that the two characters are named characters, which was an interesting choice, for various reasons. And then the Custodies and the Sisters of Silence, limiting like your regular Legion. Like, a lot of those went on eBay and got sold on and stuff like that.
I do regret I only bought one of that box, thinking that's fine. I'll buy another one in the future. Never did. I slightly regret that. I'd quite like to have had two.
Yeah, I mean, prices are almost coming back kind of towards that anyway. Yeah, like a huge thing, bearing in mind, so that's 2016. That was the last box set we got for Heresy.
I remember asking the question, and it must have been around that period, 2015, 2016. It was at either a Heresy Weekender or a Black Library Weekender in a seminar, and I asked the question, and Aaron took the answer, and I said, do you think the increased popularity of 30k will see it replace Warhammer 40,000 as a principal setting? Because at the time, 40k was on quite the slide in terms of its popularity, and there was so much momentum behind 30k. It was a genuine consideration because it was discussed and deemed, no, they will at most live on simultaneously. But it was a genuine consideration. It certainly wasn't laughed out of as being an insane possibility. It was actually there's enough which to go from where it was, which we touched on at the start of this, to be something that was challenging Warhammer 40,000, which was by far their biggest selling game.
The other thing which came with Prospero was 40k was deep in its the stage of having the formations, which was putting a lot of people off. So this is the point where I'm running the second LGT, the first one that I was involved with, and we had people there who were very much 40k players, playing Heresy, stuff like that. But kind of all swelled up with that. One thing we did miss was 2015 also saw the release of the Leviathan.
Oh, the Leviathan, yeah.
On New Year's open day, and I had someone at Forge World say, we're releasing something big tomorrow, and I was like, Mastodon? And they were like, no, not that big. But it was the Leviathan, that blew people away. Dreadnoughts would always sell. Like, new Dreadnoughts would always sell. The Leviathan was, again, another step up on that.
That was such an iconic design. I would say the Deredio was similar. Not the same, but it was similar. I remember being really impressed by that.
I think the Leviathan was universally loved.
Agreed.
Deredio wasn't. I think that's a major fact of it.
Yes, I had a particularly. I would have said the Deredio.
That was before the. Are you sure? I think the Deredio came.
No, I'm not sure. I do remember. I had a particular soft spot for the Space Crusade Dreadnought.
Right. Yeah.
And I believe that had a reference to it because that was one of my entry points into the hobby. So to see that modernized was like, this is awesome.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. And if we go on from there, because I realise time's pushing, I think we have to talk about 2017 Warhammer Fest. So this was the reveal of new 40k, 8th edition, and 40k taking a drastic turn.
Big hype.
It was also the announcement of Alan Bligh having passed the night before. And Alan Bligh was the driving force that got this kind of going, and like this one-man whirlwind of rules writing and everything else, um, and the lead writer for all the books. And this kind of happening at a time that 40k had also shifted, which meant that Heresy had to adapt to that as well. And like, I mean, it sounds so trivial because someone died, but a lot of people blame a lot of the stuff around this time for on the fact that Alan wasn't there and other people couldn't do that job. Whereas in reality, Age of Darkness staying with the rule set they had already been decided. Alan had been working on seeing if they could shift it over to the 8th system. Fundamentally, it came down to GW. Oh no, it didn't come down to it. A lot of the effect was GW not giving Forge World enough of a lead time on the rules. This is also Andy Hoare had written Fires of Syraxis, which is the ill-fated Imperial Armor book, because Imperial Armors was still going sort of at that point. That would have brought 30k Mechanicum into 40k, and not only were the rules section now completely invalidated, which would have to be all rewritten, the Citrix Maledictum had occurred, which had changed the face of 40k. 40k has now moved on to a progressive timeline, so the whole story was now not going to work as well. So had it been just the rules, it would have been a lot of work. When it's the whole book, and Andy Hoare had written most of that in his breaks and free time.
I wouldn't be surprised to find as well there wouldn't be too much appetite for releasing a product that is what would have then been seen as backward looking, or been what you were used to seeing, which was 40k as a setting, and you're there, and then
it would have
all your other products,
exactly.
your other big marketing is moving to this new thing, and then you've got this other thing that you've just released. It's quite significant, which is more of the older ethos.
Yeah,
there's not going to be the appetite for that, so problematic across the board. So as you say, there's a lot of background things happening, but the impact on that day was considerable.
Substantial, and we were told. So I've been to a lot of these different events. Myself and someone else had made friends with a lovely woman that works for GW, who still see every now and then up there, who pulled us to one side and told us that Anna had died, because she knew we were all the weekenders and stuff like that. And then I suddenly started getting messages from people saying, "I've heard Alan's died. I've heard Alan's died." And I was like, sitting there, I ignored them. I was like, it's not my place to say anything here. I'm going to the Forge World seminar, and Tony announced it there, and it was quite a emotional, weird day.
Oh, huge! And remarkably so.
It is weird because, John Fraser was supposed to be there and didn't turn up. Him and Alan were very good friends. Aaron ADB has written a blog post about it. You can still find how torn up he was by it. And it's 5.5 years ago now. It's crazy. I didn't know Alan. I've talked to him a number of times, but I think I'm not one who normally gets like this. But there's an attachment there because of what he's done. I think a lot of people feel that stronger than me, and it creates this kind of this kind of like not ownership, but this sort of friendship. Something you get a little bit with podcasts and YouTube channels, and that you feel you know them because you've heard them speak.
That's a good point. I was going to say it had an element. There was considerable admiration. There was thankfulness for what these people had done, of which he was someone. Any creative endeavour, you're putting yourself on the line. You are risking stuff. You are exposing yourself. You're exposing your thoughts or otherwise to essentially critical acclaim, but critique from people. They had done this. It had been well received. We had all been to numerous events where these people were up talking about these things. And as you say, very interesting point that through podcasts, through speaking, through attending events, we'd spoken at length this evening on the impact of being in those rooms and the way these people presented. These are capable, talented people talking about what they love. And then for someone there to be missing from that but I still think, even obviously what I've just described, that's a heavy moment. It's an unpleasant, heavy,
It was a driving
sad
force
moment.
as well.
Yes,
Like,
exactly.
he
There's
was
a there was a there
absolutely
was a
driving
definite
force.
significant figure had
Yeah.
been lost in that respect. But it was more than that, which was where the surprising element to it. There was a real sort of black cloud passed over the whole
Mm.
event, noticeably so, as more so than the sum of what I've just described.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And
Speaking a
you
lot,
look,
I think, to the impact of it.
like a lot of the Forge World team there were his friends, like
Yeah,
to
of
varying
course.
levels. And Mark Bedford, bless him, was emotional. Like, of course you would be, but he
It'd be
was still
inhuman not
there.
to be, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Exactly, he was still there attending, and there's levels of friendship and all that stuff.
Well,
But there
there's
was a
certain.
real,
It speaks to the professionalism of the individuals involved. They know they've got fans and things. Otherwise, they did what they needed to do to try and carry on through that.
yeah,
That must have been extraordinarily tough.
yeah, absolutely.
It's hard to put yourself in that position. So, but it's an interesting thing to reflect on. Sadly, the impact it had, and even now it's a tricky subject to talk about, and you want to talk about it with the respect it deserves.
Yes, because there is an element that, as I say, a lot gets like anything that is perceived to be negative since that date is quite often put down to the van. I saw someone do it the other day. They said, "Oh yeah, they definitely won't." No, then this might have. I think was it that someone had a negative viewpoint. I think it was about the Emperor of Mankind as a model or whatever, and they were like, "Oh, they might do it now. Alan's died." And I'm like,
It's
"Whoa, whoa,
crazy.
whoa, whoa, whoa!
It's
A,
crazy.
that's crazy. B, Alan was all for that. Like,
It's just crazy
it,
to be invoking statements like that.
it's crazy when you don't know the situation. Also, yeah, absolutely. But there is evidence. Like, Valdor's rules were written with the thought process that the Emperor might become a playable model.
Mm.
When you look back, Forge World have said it would be crazy to do the Horus Heresy and not be able to play the Emperor versus Horus. Like, so if you were to look into that, that's actually the opposite of what he would say anyway. But if you don't know why, like, it's very easy to tack something on, to choose something and blame everything for a
Mm.
certain
Mm.
thing.
Mm.
Like, the rules writers don't care now. They don't know what they're talking about with Horus Heresy. Neil Wiley worked on book one as a playtester and has been writing since book two. Okay, he's not Alan. No, no one's Alan. No one's Neil Wiley. They're their own people.
Mm. Mm.
But you're not telling me you can work through six books with someone, right, and have a completely fundamentally different outlook on what you're doing. It can't happen. Like the Andy Hoare, John French are involved and have been involved all the way through this whole process.
Mm.
Like the kind of backbone of the Horus Heresy has changed over the years through people leaving for various reasons and whatever. But there's still a lot of those like threads that are still worked through the whole
Oh yeah, for sure.
company. You only have to look at the hobby staff, like a couple have left and retired or whatever, but they've still got the same names from book one. I read out some of those names, still there, still involved. Like the product we have
Mm.
now, and crazily, when people look at Age of Darkness now and things like that, Alan reactions were Alan wanted to put them in.
Mm.
Like when they made the decision, Andy Hoare had said to me at one point, because there was a lot of speculation about, should it have stayed seventh, should we gone to eighth, all that jazz. He's like, Alan looked into making it eighth. They didn't have enough time anyway, whether it could have worked or not. They didn't have enough time. And they said, let eighth happen and we'll watch it and we'll see what's good and we'll see what's bad. And down the line, we'll, maybe we'll do something.
Mm.
Well, look at the game we've got now. It
Mm.
takes aspects of Age of Sigmar and 40k and builds on what we had. And, cool.
It's
But,
its own thing, and it's stronger
is.
for it.
And you know what? So, 27, bless him. 2017, sorry. I think you go through, I think that was the start of the leaner times for the Heresy. Lots of changes around Forge World, lots of
And
changes
it's
around DW.
and I think it's particularly important just to reiterate what you said. That makes it sound like it's linked to the
And this,
to the
it's
significant
part of the
event.
problem. Yeah,
It's
that
part
is.
of. It's part of, but it is not,
No, I mean
and
that's
should
part of
not
the
be the whole
problem
thing.
in people's perception is
I
because that
completely
happened
agree.
and then it happened.
Yeah, to
Just
suggest
because
that that's just
Yeah,
because of the
because
timing. Yeah,
Alan's not there anymore doesn't mean
yeah,
production
I
slows
completely
down.
agree.
Like
Yeah, yeah,
there's lots of things going on within that, but it was that's unfortunately it's kind of it's a marked moment in the heresy.
mhm,
What we
yeah,
did get was the red books all come out
yes,
right around that, like
which made gaming considerably easier.
so much easier, so much easier. Um, but beyond the red books, and there were still things coming out, and we covered on the show, like Heresy's not dead, it's not dying, there is stuff happening, it's slowed, that something's building. That went off, and then COVID, like 2 years of that was COVID,
Mm.
right? The year before COVID was actually quite a positive year, but wasn't perceived that way by lots of people. They almost didn't want to see what
It's
Forge
interesting,
Roll was
isn't it?
doing.
Because you almost needed. We're looking back on milestones and significant events. A couple of those are not significant releases in and of themselves. Galvorback was a significant thing, but they're still just
Mm,
like one resin kit of 5 models. Not that big a deal. But they were significant in terms of what they represented and the time and things went with them. But a lot of the other things have been significant releases. One wonders if you need to have those, or rather, there's a perception that you need to have those for the thing to be vital and alive. That said, the
yeah,
game was still tricky, particularly as I think that another key point there was when Calth and Prospero weren't reprinted.
yeah,
When those went off of stock items and you couldn't purchase those anymore, that was problematic for the perception of the game and the way you play the game.
yeah. And a lot of it was perception, but
Black
perception
books,
is everything.
black books such a labour of love, such
Yeah,
a vast undertaking to get right and do to the standard of which they held themselves to, rightly so. That was a problem. When was the Weekender where Sanguinius
2017.
was released? Was that 19 or was it 18?
That was
It was February.
sorry, I'm married 4 years this year. So that was 2018, 2019 was the last one because
February
that was the
19.
one I missed. Yeah,
Yeah. February
yeah.
19 then. Yes, you weren't there. That's absolutely right. Yeah, February 19
I was in
was,
hospital.
and it was at a different venue. At least they couldn't get the Belfry or whatever it was. And the Black Book didn't make it to that one. But the Black Books had sort of slowed down.
But they weren't that
No, it wasn't
weirdly. They
that
weren't.
significant, was it? No.
No, and this is the thing. Like people thought, oh, we get one every year at the Weekender. That
Yeah,
became a
exactly.
thing. I'm like, no, you haven't had one every year at the Weekender. The first four came out very quickly. There was a year and a half gap, I think, or two.
Mm,
There was at least a year and a half gap. I think book five. Like
yeah.
it was a big gap, and then one did come out, and then book seven they flew some books over so that they
Yes.
would be there at the Weekender. They weirdly that Weekender, the last one, they knew they weren't going to have the books ready for the Weekender. Now maybe they should have told people that beforehand. Maybe there's a communication thing there. I think we discussed that. But then actually, I think what ended up happening was there was a change in scheduling in China on the print. They got printed early, but it wasn't conveyed to the right people till too late because they actually could have flown some over and had them at that weekend.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah,
But,
that's it. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
but it wasn't planned. It was never planned to be at that weekend. But there became this. I was having arguments with people. They're like, "Well, they release a book every weekender." I'm like, "No, they don't.
Hmm.
The book five was released in the summer,
Hmm.
like or whenever it was. Like they were like they have released two
It
or
was
three
unusual
books
as
at
well.
weekenders.
When we now think about it, and people are saying, "Oh, this is like Age of Darkness coming along, 10 years after that rule set." The first time that rule, we're talking about Heresy
No, it's
2.0
20.
version 2.
Yeah, 2019. Sorry, I'm just
Yeah.
confirming it.
So you're talking the second edition of a game 10 years after the first edition of the
Mm.
game is released. Yeah, okay, there was tightening ups, kind of, but it wasn't really significant when they released the Red Book rule book. Basically the same game as they'd had for 10 years. There is no other Games Workshop game, bold statement, so I'm not 100% sure of my facts, but I don't believe there's another Games Workshop game that's been 10 years without a second edition. Let's talk a mainstream. I really limit myself. Mainstream 28mm game that's had that. The editions are normally on a 3-year cycle-ish?
Oh, they are now, yeah.
They
We
are
had
now.
5 or 6 back in the day for some of them.
Even, yeah, okay. That sounds long to me for some of these, but still.
Oh, no, that
10
was,
years.
it was long. Second
10 years
edition
is
was
a big
a
deal.
long time.
Second
Anyway,
edition 40k?
Third, was it third to fourth?
Maybe
fourth
third.
to fifth was really quick. But anyway, yeah, I think third to fourth was.
Anyway,
was
it's still shorter, much shorter periods of time that you'd have had between editions of a game. For this one to have lasted to gone through 10 years and had continuous releases in those, but it just felt like it had waned considerably.
Yeah.
At that point.
And the annoying thing was there was this. Well, there was a perception outside as well because of, we said it before again. Heresy's dead. Was a terrible statement because people believed it because it was being said ironically but without any irony by people. So someone from the outside was like, "Oh, okay, cool, it's dead, fine, no worries, whatever," and all that kind of stuff. But we eventually get to, and the release we've got today is delayed at least a year, probably 2. It was, well, no, definitely 2 because we saw photos of it a year before, and there was talk about it all that before that. But we are here now, 10 years on. The game is the strongest it's ever been. Plastics, oh my god, so much plastic stuff, so many good rules, all within the spirit of Heresy. The game is within the spirit of Heresy. There's rumours of redoing some of the old Primarchs and stuff like that, which I kind of is exciting, whether it's true or not. Cool, it's exciting. Yeah, stunning models coming out, huge amount of selection and variety. It's just seeing what the next step is now. The exciting thing for me now is how do they manage second edition? When are we going to get? Are we getting campaign books in the same way AT does? What are we getting? How are they addressing that? Are we going to get 40k style campaign books with in the style they're doing, the Nihilist campaign or things like that? Cool. Events are selling out, and
within the first weeks of the release happening, it may have been, I forget the specific timeline, we had a roadmap.
Yeah.
We've never had a roadmap before, he says confidently, but we've never had a roadmap like that before. So even then, if there's roadmaps now for Warcry, for Kill Team, Heresy's done it, Necromunda had it before, all of them. People have been asking for those for a long time, and Heresy has one. Okay, and it's given us a suggestion of what the next 2 books were going to be.
Yeah.
Doesn't say about camp. It doesn't answer all of the questions you just proposed, but it's something, and it's suggesting we might have roadmaps going forward. It looks pretty good.
They're all, and I think part of this is outlook. I could sit here and be like, oh my word, they haven't even told us what's in that Imperial book, or my talent's going to be used for, or what have you. You can sit there like that, or you can be like, they're releasing I can't remember what the title of it is now, is the Armies of the Imperium or whatever it is. What could they put in there? What are we going to see? I think you have to accept that a company like Games Workshop have a set style of release. It's a style of release that guarantees them constant flow of income without flooding the market, anything like that. So they'll want a steady set of releases every month. There'll be something coming out every few months. There'll be something bigger to change things up, move all the way down. It's what 40k does. It's what Age of Sigmar does. I think we have to, could be wrong, but we have to assume there's a similar plan in place for 30k, because why would there not be? The expansion of what they've done with their plastic stuff, their molding machines, I wonder where they're going to go with that, because they're still struggling to catch up now. That's sort of a good problem to have. Maybe they expand again within that, which would only be a good thing because it would allow more tooling time
this might be. I mean, yeah, and it's always fun to speculate at these sorts of points. Hearing suggestions that this is the release of Age of Darkness and the associated releases at the same time was the most successful product launch Games Workshop have ever made, i.e., outsold Indomitus, which otherwise had been their most successful box set launch. The other times I can think of where they've spoken in those kinds of terms, they were surprised, for example, by the release of Blood Bowl, when they re-released Blood Bowl,
Yeah,
and
they
that
were,
did
and they
very well.
and they
And there was
knew
an
it was going to
influx
be
of cash. They knew it was
they,
going to be good.
they
They
knew
didn't
it
know
was
it was
going
going
to
to
be
be that
successful.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah, there was an influx of profit from that
yeah.
that was then
Not just
it
profit, but
enabled.
proof of desire for
Yes, good
for
point.
games that aren't 40k and Age of Sigmar.
I'm immediately jumping to the resources that then gives
Yeah,
you, but you're
yeah.
absolutely right. That's crucial because it gives them the certainty. Well,
Mm.
as much as anything can be, but it gives them some sort of okay. There's an appetite for this, and there's now a player base for this. There's a group of people
And
with
that's
some
the
things.
and that's the other thing that Age of Darkness does. Because what they don't want to do is just move all their 40k players to Age of Darkness because that's counterproductive. But well, to a point, I mean, they'd buy loads of new choice. But what they want their games to be different because they want, and this is the thing, like when we were playing in the mid '90s, you could play even when Specialist Games was in its golden period in Buddington, you could play every game
Yeah.
that Games Workshop made. You could do it. It would take it would take up all your hobby time, but you could do it. Now that's impossible. I mean, I play too many Games Workshop games, and I basically binned off Necromunda, and I've binned off Warcry, and a few others. And I don't really play much 40k. I don't play much Age of Sigmar at the moment. I'm playing Age of Darkness. I haven't played Blood Bowl in ages. I really want to. Kill Team, Titanicus. I haven't played. There's a lot going on. You just can't keep up. But they've realised that that's not a bad thing because Fred only plays Heresy, and Jeff only plays Kill Team, or he plays Kill Team and Blood Bowl. And Sally plays Heresy and Titanicus, and that's it. And you've got to make enough, and you've got to keep the releases up to keep that. Now, Titanicus maybe not be doing it at the moment, but you've got to give them enough to keep buying, whilst also not completely overloading everyone. It's a tough balance.
It's a very tough call. It's a tough call, but it seems to be paying off. There's an interesting thing with Heresy in particular, and you will probably see it with Old World when it comes along, because I've heard people saying the same thing. I had a very interesting conversation with my brother-in-law recently, this last weekend. He has gone out and bought, I think, all of the upcoming, or maybe it's already released, Magic the Gathering Warhammer stuff.
Oh, yeah, good.
He has no intention of playing it. He doesn't. No. It's pure nostalgia. Pure nostalgia. He said he has a unique place. He is into a wide range of nerdy things, geeky things, as we all are into those things. He is not active in the hobby. He was in his younger years. He's not now. He doesn't feel he has the time to give it to give it the work he would like to. But he said he has a unique place for Warhammer things, specifically Space Marines, Warhammer 40,000, 30k. That it almost he said it, and he was struggling to sort of find the words for it, the vocabulary for it. But it's a strange form of nostalgia that just because it is Warhammer, he's bought those Magic the Gathering things. He doesn't play Magic the Gathering. He doesn't play 40k at the moment. But he bought them he said he's going to largely buy them, look at the artwork, and go, that's cool, pack it up, put it on the shelf, job done. He's bought it pure nostalgia. 30k has a tendency to tap into that. I would argue more than certain.
Mainly because it's got older 40K people.
Yeah, frankly, they've got the thing. I mean, I've already said I got into the game through Space Crusade or Epic. 30k references all those kinds of things really quite well. 40k is doing it a bit. I'm sure Age of Sigmar does in its own way. Old World will do it 10 times.
Oh, yeah, big time.
There's an element of that, and you wonder if they'll continue down that route. I mean, they've done that extremely well through there. I mean, you mentioned the Master of Signals earlier. when they released the Master of Signal model, and it was the Rogue Trader Space Marine with
Well,
the giant bulbous helmet. You're like, oh yes, I have to have that now.
Well, look at what they've done with the new Warhammer Plus model. Taken a white dwarf cover and made it into a model. You only have to look at some of the just 2 or 3. Like every now and then they release a model which is purely based on an old Jess Goodwin sculpt or what have you, and people will buy nostalgia. I think being able to distance yourself from nostalgia is one of the best things you can do for your wallet as an adult. And I am much better at it than I was. I encourage people to get better at it because a lot of the time, and it's fine if you've got the money, cool. If I turn around to, my wife will let me spend the money on whatever I want to spend the money on, just as long as we can pay the bills and all that's fine, just as long as I'm being sensible. But if I turn around to her and said, I bought every Magic the Gathering 40k card there is, and they're all just going to sit up there. So be like, why? And that's fine. If that's what you get joy out of, that's what you get joy out of. And that's not a bad thing. For me, I've managed to push my nostalgia down. But that's the thing. You just know you're going to spend money if nostalgia's a driving force. And for me, I'm going to use that money on. I was going to say stuff I want to do, but it's not, is it? It's like house renovation.
Like you say, it's whatever brings you joy, as I suspect Heresy is going to continue to do.
Or peace and quiet.
Yes, that's a thing, he says.
Which is joy of its own kind.
Yes, it has its own particular excitement. But we look forward to the next 10 years, don't we?
We do, absolutely. And we could have talked about more stuff there and specific models and what have you. I'm sure. There's plenty of time. There's plenty of time to chat moving forwards. We've got to do things like revisit the Primarch listings at some point. Once we got more Battlefield data on the Primarchs and how they work, and change all that kind of stuff. 10 years of cool stuff, even with COVID in there and and things going on. Events are ratcheting up. People are getting to grips with the game in a way that they're starting to understand the nuances a little bit more, I think. Some people never will. That's fine because they don't want to. Some people don't care. Cool, crack on. Play the game you want to play. But I think, exciting times, as they say. And we will, as I say, we will be looking more at gaming stuff moving forwards as well. I just don't want to push it until it's worth talking about because there's a lot of drivel being spoken through lack of understanding and lack of knowledge. And I appreciate why people are doing it. I'm not really bagging on it at all. But just made the decision that there's enough for us to talk about outside of it, and we are the Pretentious Podcast, so we can do this kind of thing. It's fine.
I'm totally getting a T-shirt with that on.
We should do. We should make some T-shirts.
That's the thing. That should be a thing.
Sorted. But there's and I say I'm a company of legends, so maybe we'll talk a little bit about that next month.
No, that'd be good. Yeah.
And I was thinking about the podcast today as well. I know there's other things we can do moving forward that we might have to have a look at and change things up because it's exciting.
It is.
Super
what
exciting.
Those reveals going to bring.
One of the big interesting things is in the next year we're going to have no more Heresy novels in the series. We'll be down to a few Primarch novels and character series and however else they're going to dip in, but the actual Heresy series, the Siege of Terror, will be over. And who knows how that's going to finish.
Yeah, quite. We may only have one Primarch novel.
Really?
We've got 2 left, haven't we? And Sanguinius is coming shortly.
Is it only 2 left?
It's only 2.
Maybe.
It's only Sanguinius and Horus, and Sanguinius' cover
Sanguinius
has been announced.
Yeah.
Horus hasn't, but it's going to be a toss-up whether or not Horus comes before or after the end of the siege.
I think it'll come after.
I think
They've told us. They've told us about Dan's book.
Mm.
It can't be too far off. Like, it will be months away, but
it's going to be in the new year. I would assume. But
bear in mind, so when did they show off Aaron's book? It was early this year, February, March.
Yeah,
I want to say. So 6 months.
Yes, it was at the Black Library celebration, I think.
Oh, was it? So February. So 6 months. Effectively, it's been 6 months since that and release. Mm. So if we put a similar timeline on Dan, that puts us around Christmas.
Oh wow! Okay. Could be Christmas. Could be January.
Yeah, maybe Black Library celebration. Push it back. Who knows? But even if it's then, it's not a huge amount of time.
No.
Exciting stuff. Right, we should leave that there and both head to bed, my friend. Separate beds.
I was just quite far apart. This is how rumours.
I mean, I've shared beds with.
This has taken a turn. People. This has taken a surprising turn at the end of this conversation.
We are quite far apart from each other, and I'm not driving up to West London to see you. I do apologize.
It's very cosy up here in Hobby.
They wouldn't let me in this time of night. It's fine.
It's probably best.
Wonderful stuff. Thank you, Howard.
Pleasure as always, and I look forward to chatting again soon. And catch you soon, buddy.
And thank you for making it to the end of another episode of The Imperial Truth. I hope you enjoyed the episode since recording, and just before I'm putting this up, we've had the announcement that the book 8 of the Siege of Terror is going to be split into 2. We will talk about that next time. We've got the Nova revealed tonight, so I won't be talking about that. There's exciting stuff going on though. We're looking forward to it. If you have any feedback, please email greg@theimperialtruth.com. If you've got any stories about the Heresy, much in the vein of what we've been doing, then please feel free to let me know there as well. Or you can reply on the show thread on Facebook, or tweet, or Instagram. @ChildofFang is my personal Instagrams. At Imperial_Truth on Twitter. Let's say find us on Facebook if you search for The Imperial Truth. If you feel like supporting us and want to buy cheap toys from one of the best shops in the UK, then go to Element Games via the link in the show notes or the advert on the website, theimperialtruth.com. And if you want to support us in a straight monetary way, we have a Patreon, which you can find the links for the show notes in that, or you can, that's the best way to get them, is the links in the show notes for that. As I say, I'm off to Durham, hopefully, as this releases a couple of days afterwards. So we'll be playing with some Sons of Horus up there, and hopefully we'll come and talk about that a little bit when I get back. But I've got a feeling there's going to be a lot to talk about in general, so all exciting stuff as far as I'm concerned. I'm not going to waffle on much longer. In fact, let's leave it there. Until next time, you have been listening to The Imperial Truth.